boom, but a very fuzzy boom. Let me fix that. What the heck is going on? Ah, that's not right. How's everyone doing? I'm just gonna fix this as quickly as I can. That is super fuzzy. Um, so while we do that, I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I hope everyone's got something to wind down. If you're a fan of the alcoholic beverages, it is a great time for that. There we go. Um, and if not, then the other beverages are a great choice too. I've got a Coke here, but I'm going to start out. I think um, it's a nice sunny day. I'm going with a cider. I've got a Strongbow here, and Strongbow is not a sponsor here. I'm just I just like them. So I like this comment here. You're not standing in for Rob if you're on time. I thought Ian was hotboxing his room. Nice. Yeah, I've got a Strongbow. Let me know what you guys are sipping on here, because it's uh it's a good day. Now I say it's a good day, but what is it? Rob is sick today. You're probably wondering why you're stuck with me. Although I have to say, I do think I like the surrogate court line, because surrogate court is an actual court. They do like estates and that sort of thing. But yeah, the I think it's a great line for these sort of fill-in streams, and so uh, yeah, let me know what people are sipping on here. I see Chardonnay after a long day, water flavor enhancers in sparkling water with ice, nice. Um, Lime Coke. I actually quite like Coke with a little bit of lime squirted in it. So yeah. Um, and I see drinking a Montana Mule in Golden, Colorado. Very nice. Uh, Another Chardonnay, coconut water, and pain meds. Hopefully, hopefully those are prescribed, and hopefully there's not too much pain, because that's not a lot of fun. Drinking a margarita on the rocks in Columbia, South Carolina. Oh, and I see we've got Uncivil in the chat. Hey, Uncivil, how you doing? Um, Drinking yuzu sake. I haven't had sake in a while. Um, I haven't had sake in a while. I should try that. Did you give Rob your flu via YouTube? I don't think that's possible, but I hope not. Um, Kurt, how are you doing? Let me know if you want a link here. I see, is Danny coming? I haven't seen Danny, but if she shows up, I'd be happy to throw her a link as well. Yeah, it's and I see lemon iced tea in Sutherland. All right, so you do want a link. I will send a link. Give me a second here. Just 1 second. Sending Uncivil a link. We got a bunch to talk about today, and some of it is like breaking news as of today. Like, this is just something I sort of monitor certain cases, and some of them I don't really expect anything to happen on, and then I'm wrong. So that's fun. And just 1 second here. Give me a second, and I'm just there we go. We've got Kurt in the back there. I am pulling him in. Hey, how you doing?
Hello, everyone out there in the YouTube. And, well, as my voice decides to give out halfway through that attempted enthusiastic opening.
Oh, well.
I'm doing great.
My I'm doing great. The same thing where it taps out midway through a sentence. So.
Yes. So my vocal cords decide to give up hope halfway through the sentence. Oh, well. Life moves on.
I've been playing a bunch of video games because I've just been I'm trying to record, and then I'm like, I I'm not feeling great, or I try to record and I need to clear stuff out of my throat, and then I'm like, all right, let's goof off and play some video games in the meantime. So what have you been up to?
We've got too much purple going on in this combination of colors right now. I need to change up the color scheme. Well, not much. What did I do today? Oh, I was doing some stuff for my acting class. I was meeting someone outside of class to work on some stuff. And then on Monday, I've got a new narrative improv I'm starting. And Wednesday, I'm doing stand-up comedy classes. So I'm excited about all that.
Oh, nice. And what is it?
There we go.
I think that's a little bit... you got to wrangle the lights here into the right right shape and size there.
Feel like a berry. I feel like a blueberry in this shirt. I think the shirt isn't doing me any favors right now.
Oh well, one of my favorite shirts I can't wear on stream because it does the moire effect. So
isn't that the one with the where you can the lights as you're traveling so that you like the planes can land? Is that moire effect?
No, it's when you've got like a grid or like a pattern of lines that are just the right side or right sort of distance apart. Some cameras won't pick them up properly and it won't be able to really figure that out. And so it comes out as like this flickering, unpleasant pattern. And so it looks terrible is really what it comes down to. It looks awful.
Excellent news.
So it's like, it's a great shirt. Love the shirt, but can't wear it for any of that. So
unless you just want to confuse everyone, like with the dazzle. That'd be good.
Yeah. And David, I haven't gotten to any super chats yet. Just chill. We'll get to those in a moment. We're introducing things.
I was on with Nick Rackets last night, man, till 2:30 in the morning till I gave up.
I saw that. I'm still a little sick, so I had to sort of tap out on that one. I was watching for a bit, and then I was like, I can't. I also had to record something, so I was like, yeah.
I saw what you produced. It was good.
Yeah. It's I don't want to get into it in too much detail, but it's the.
I know. I just thought I'd tell you I thought it was good. We can move on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're just mentioning. I did a video on Peterson. I got to be super careful about how I talk about it because it's literally about how much regulators can screw up your life in Canada, and I'm in Canada, so. Yeah, it's like I kind of feel like talking about it is a little bit like trying to disarm a bomb while riding on top of a paint mixer. It's like, all right, you cut the wire. It's like, so, all right. We'll just, was it? All right, so there's a few things I wanted to talk about. One of them is people wanted to talk about FTX. Still. Well, FTX keeps being crazy. That case continues to be nuts. And I don't know how and why it continues to be nuts, but it does. So I want to pull up the... basically, Sam Bankman-Fried wants he wants a bunch of stuff because he got his bail denied, and so he wanted the government to basically
he had his bail granted, then he decided to f around, then he decided to f around some more.
I was gonna say it wasn't just one round.
How about less?
Yeah, it was
with
basically
the bond, with the bail.
You have run out of F around. Now we are getting to the fun part.
And then he filed this motion. Well, I liked his motion of, can I meet with my attorneys every single day in the U.S. Attorney's Office? It's like, you can meet with them once for 6 hours at the courthouse. How about that?
And so we'll talk a little bit about that one because people wanted me to go over the order. The order itself is short, but it refers to a letter. And so
wasn't the order just literally just a minute order? Was there a separate order? Was it just literally the docket entry?
No, it's an interim order. There is an
Okay.
interim order. It
Yeah.
was
I thought
filed on the
it was just the
23rd.
docket entry, because sometimes when the order is really short, the judge will just it'll be just on the docket entry, and that's all there is.
Oh yeah, this one is a little longer than that, but
Okay. Not by
not
much.
much. Not by much. So this is the interim order. So it says pending the court's resolution of the dispute between the government and the defendant concerning defendant's access to discovery materials in view of his detention, i.e., he's not getting out because he effed around too much. And unless otherwise ordered, the government and the USMS shall make available to the defendant, if he elects to avail himself of the government's offer set out in the last 3 paragraphs of the government's letter of August 18th, 2023, the accommodations there set forth commencing August 21st, 2023, which is interesting because this was actually filed on the 23rd.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing that it was, so that's unusual. They say, to whatever extent the defendant elects to meet with counsel in the courthouse cell block, he shall give notice to the government and the USMS at least 48 hours in advance of any requested meeting date. So it looks like he does get meeting dates, but he also has to give 48 hours notice. But he wanted all sorts of things, like he's got unlimited computer access, he's got this, he's got that. And
let me try to explain to you in really easy to understand words how jail works.
yeah, so he basically says you can have what the government was
I want
offering.
you to ask yourself the question without answer your own question at this point. Do you think that being in jail includes unlimited computer access?
Well,
No?
and like
Great, you've answered your own question.
Unlimited outings to meet with his lawyers. Like,
No.
No. Like, so he basically, the judge basically just says, I am granting what the government promised in the meantime. And what they said that they would do is that they would provide him with hard drives directly to the MDC with materials for his review, and that there are computers there for him where he will have frequent computer access. If they want specific things, the government will prioritize those things. Like if it's like, hey, we need these 3 documents to for my client's review, it's like, great, we'll make sure he's got that tomorrow. And I love this part. The defense attorneys can take unlimited advantage of the legal visitation hours at the MDC.
If you want to haul yourselves down to the jail, knock yourselves out.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that this is how every other lawyer, like who deals with clients who are in custody, how you visit your client, right?
Yeah.
So when I want to visit my client in custody, if I've got a client who's gotten bail denied, they don't arrange for them to be at the courthouse for me. They don't arrange for him to be delivered to my office. They don't let him out so that he can have a wander or anything like that. Instead, I go visit them in cells, and it sucks. Like, visiting people in cells sucks.
So
It
what
really
you're
does.
telling me is that being in jail might be somewhat an inhibition on my liberty and freedom.
Exactly so.
Okay.
And that it might not be all that much fun. It's, and I mean, sure, it sucks for the lawyers, but you can still go to the jail. And if I was the judge, I'd be saying, no, you can visit him in jail. Like we never consider this to be a problem for any other defendant. And if we let your client do it, notwithstanding his money and fame and whatever else, then we have to start letting other people do it. Are we going to start letting people with other really complicated files that have them in jail, which will mostly be like super, like murders that have gotten a lot of attention, and like serial killers? Koberger has a lot of disclosure and stuff he's going to have to look over. Does he get to go for a little visit with his lawyers every time?
I don't know.
So
file a motion to tour the alleged crime scene. That'll be good.
I have actually toured crime scenes myself, but it's always after they're
Yeah.
cleared, right? Um, so yeah, I see Megamex says people in custody wouldn't even be allotted an offline laptop with a lawyer present. Usually, my clients have like very little access to a computer at all.
Yeah.
No
Computer access to
offline
the extent it
laptop.
exists probably is like in a library somewhere where it's a very old computer that is
If
very monitored.
if I want to visit a client and bring a computer, because there's video disclosure that we have to go over, I have to let them know in advance that I'm bringing a computer, and there's all sorts of, you know, there's all sorts of procedures where you have to go through for that. And they want to be like, okay, you have to keep the Wi-Fi off. You have to do all of this. So it's I. It is kind of satisfying to see him get some, some comeuppance here. But yeah,
if he thinks the
and I see.
restrictions are now bad, now he'll really hit them once he's convicted.
But a person is presumed innocent. So isn't some of this restriction a problem for the defense? It does interfere with the defense a bit. The problem is that you don't normally get denied bail unless there's a reason for it. And in this case, the reason,
He effed
like,
around.
he effed around and he effed around and he effed around and he effed around, and he long past the point where the judge was like, "Are you sure, government, that you don't want him detained? Because, like, I'm all ready to do that, like, any minute now." And finally, the government is like, "Yeah, we can have him detained." And yeah, so
all he had to do was, keep his nose clean in his palatial mansion that he had access to.
Oh Christ!
As he was out on bail.
Most of my clients,
he couldn't help contacting witnesses. He couldn't help contacting people and trying to, what would you say, discuss with them that perhaps maybe they didn't remember events in exactly the right way.
Yeah, and
there's a name for that. We call it obstruction.
Yeah, and witness tampering,
witness tampering,
intimidation, that sort of thing. Yeah, I made the line of, it's really easy to not tamper with witnesses and not intimidate witnesses. Like, we're both doing it right now. And I'm guessing most or all of the chat is also not doing it right now. I hope. So, yeah. I got a new puppy swoop. It's the same dog, so it's not like a new puppy, although it actually is earlier in time, back to when Zora was an even smaller pup. So I will roll that, and then we'll read some super chats, and then we'll proceed on. There's more cases to talk about here. So let's have a look.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was when we got Zora, we were really worried that Potter would be a big jerk, and that because he's a much bigger dog. We were worried that that Potter would kind of be a bully and push her around and so forth. And instead, Potter was very sweet. So that was Zora playing with a stick, and then Potter comes along and he's like, "We can play tug of war." Potter liked tug of war right up until he started losing, because Zora is like half his size, but gives 250% effort. So so once Zora started winning those things, he was like, "Nah, I'm gonna give up. This is embarrassing." And so let's go through some super chats here. I see Nicholas Starro saying, "I hate to admit it, but I kind of enjoy seeing him titled brats discover real life." Oh, who am I kidding? I don't hate to admit it at all. The thing is like, any of my clients who have been busted for things like stealing a bottle of liquor would have been in jail a long time before Sam Bankman-Fried got
It's kind
there.
of funny how those things work sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still a bottle of liquor and you're in jail, you still a couple $1 billion, and it's like, well, it's not so bad.
Yeah, exactly. So I just go like, yeah. Um, I see Glenda Irby. Thank you very much for the membership there. Tracy C. Thank you for the membership as well. Megan Brogden. Happy Saturday morning from Melbourne, Australia. I want to see Australia one day. That's on my bucket
How
list.
could you? It
So,
doesn't exist.
well, I want to see the imaginary, facility that they fly you to when you're
Hmm.
going to visit Australia to
Hmm.
pretend that Australia exists.
Hmm.
So, um, E. Warner says, hard day today, locked out of the house for 6 hours.
That sucks.
Oh, that sucks. that sucks a lot.
About the time when you start considering breaking something. Just remember, it's not breaking
That's
and entering when you own the home. That's legal.
There have been cases where people have been dinged for all sorts of stupid offenses, but yes, you should, like, you've got the right to enter your house.
Yeah.
You've got the right to damage your house.
Yeah.
So the combination of those things is you've got the right to do those. So
Yeah.
But it's also kind of, this is where being a criminal defense lawyer is useful. Because I locked myself out of the house at one point, and then I went around and basically was like, based on all the files I've read, how would I break? Like, how would one of my clients get into my house? Ideally, causing as little
You could just call one of your
damage
clients.
as
They owe
possible.
you a solid.
Except I don't want to tell my clients where I live.
That's fair.
Because yeah,
You know how you're really good at breaking into houses? Would you break into mine?
but I did manage to figure out that one of my windows was insecure, and I wiggled it loose, and I got in without breaking anything. And then I had to re-secure that because I was like, that's not right. That should not be. It should not be this easy to break in. So I fixed that. If I get locked out again, I'm going to be stuck. But yeah. And I see just get lockpicking lawyer on the job.
That's right.
Yeah, he'd have to fly out from the U.S. and I don't think. I think I can find a lawyer or a locksmith here for cheaper. So, although I do actually want to do
where he is. That's how good he is.
Yeah, he'll just walk me.
Physically being present.
He'll walk me through it over the phone. He's like, "Can you find a
Probably.
stick? Can you, we'll get that going." So, we'll, yeah, I actually kind of want to run a, test on on one of these locksmith services. So, but that'll be its own video if I can get that going. So, I want to, because some of those locksmithing services are really, really sketchy, and yeah. So, David Thomas says, "Have one on me. I drink Sparkle Puff, a 10.2% triple IPA, made by the Flying Monkeys Brewery in Ontario. Nice."
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that one's made it out here to where I am. Canada is a regulatory hellhole for booze.
It's a regulatory hellhole for everything, Ian.
It is, but booze is especially bad. If you want to move alcohol out of the province where it's made to another province, it's really tough. There's some alcohols from like one province over that I can get in the US, but I can't get here in Alberta. So, yeah, that makes me unhappy. I see Alan Fortenberry says, "I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 and constantly making new characters instead of progressing the story very far." I am mixed on Baldur's Gate 3. Have you played it?
No, but I've heard good things.
There's some things I like about it, and there's some things I really don't like about it. And the things that I really don't like about it keep disrupting my enjoyment of it, such that I'm like, I'm going to quit out because this annoyed me. One of the things that annoys me about it is you've got this group of characters, but a lot of encounters, it's just whichever one happens to be active at the moment has to make all the skill checks. So it's like, okay, you've got your wizard active and you happen to click on this thing and it's like, you need to move the heavy object. And you're like, can I not ask the strong person to do it? Because I am not strong. They're like, no, you've got to roll with your negative. And you're like, I hate this so much. So yeah, it's that part is frustrating. So but I really like the game otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So CMS, thank you very much for the YouTube membership. Much appreciated. Becky, thank you for the membership as well. Patty Jacques, hi Ian, 15-year-old whiskey is at the post office until September 3rd. I would want to drink that. Haley Mouse says, my 17-and-a-half-year-old cat Binks died Monday. Thanks for making me laugh. I'm sorry to hear about the cat. Let's hope we can hopefully have some fun things to talk about. Casey Cat says, we hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit today. 129 Fahrenheit, it feels like. 10th day in a row in Kansas City. Cold front finally moves in Sunday. Oof.
I've heard Kansas City is a really, really nice place.
I could believe that. Seems kind of rural, kind of pleasant there. Wesley Hoax says, what are the Canadian laws regarding entrapment? In the ongoing Wisconsin governor kidnapping trial, the AG was granted a motion barring the defense from raising entrapment.
That's a bit surprising.
Yeah, entrapment is hard to raise as a defense here in Canada. Because
pretty hard in America too.
You basically, it basically has to be either it can't just be that they're giving you the opportunity to commit a crime unless there's no reason for them to give you an opportunity. Like they can't do random virtue testing. But if they've got an area where there's like a lot of thefts going on, then they can set up a sting in that area. And it's not random virtue testing because then it's connected to it. I actually go through this a lot in the case of Senior, which I did, I think, 5 videos on that case because it's a long case. But have a watch those videos, and it goes through entrapment a lot because that was his primary argument. Richard Senior, police officer who got busted for wanting to steal drugs that don't exist, and also
still attempts, baby.
Well, and he actually also stole, and it's conspiracy and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But he also stole a police shotgun.
Yeah.
Because he was convinced that there was this undercover cop was a real drug boss. And so he was going to raid this drug stash with like a shotgun and body armor. And he was also selling steroids. Like it's a whole disaster.
Now, I'm a little bit surprised about the Whitmer thing because the evidence in Whitmer, when I read the preliminaries, it's been a while since I've read stuff in Whitmer, but the preliminaries, I thought, okay, there's actually something here that maybe you could actually raise an entrapment defense. So it's pretty hard in the United States. So I'm actually a bit surprised that the AG won a motion to bar the defense. So I will have to read that court order and go through it. The sort of too long didn't read version of entrapment is essentially the government has to overcome your will. It has to be something that you wouldn't have done, but for the government sort of forcing you or tricking you or deceiving you or something that you wouldn't naturally be inclined to do. So sort of like the old classic examples, like, the police officer does a bust for a lady of the night. They dress up as a lady of the night to entrap somebody. But it's not entrapment because that person would have solicited that person regardless of whether they're a police officer or not. So the fact they're a police officer is irrelevant. So they basically have to overcome your will. There was some evidence that seemed to lead that direction, though. So I was a bit surprised they barred the defense in Whitmer.
Now, they do end up getting some people on the Lady of the Night scenarios, but those are typically situations where, like, the police have, continually hassled somebody about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, because it's like if the undercover officer goes up to the person and persistently, pressures them, or persistently makes an effort to make an active seduction out of it, then it's then it's a very different scenario there. It's a very different different situation on all of that one.
And also,
So
while we're here, we can learn something a little bit about factual impossibility when it comes to charging someone with something, because Ian was referring earlier to someone doing something like stealing drugs or something that doesn't exist. But it doesn't matter if you don't know that. So this is a classic law school hypothetical. And classic law school hypothetical, it's like I shoot a bullet into the heart of a man who I believe to be sleeping, but he isn't sleeping. He's dead.
yeah,
So what
or
am I guilty? So what am I guilty of?
you walk in the middle of Weekend at Bernie's and you
Yeah,
shoot
right.
Bernie dead. It's
Yeah.
like,
So
well,
I shoot a bullet into the man, into the heart of a man I believe to be sleeping, but he isn't sleeping. He's dead. So what am I guilty of? Not murder, but attempted murder.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Because so the factual impossibilities does not preclude the fact that I tried. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
At
mean, there's
times.
other scenarios. Like, let's say you
Yeah.
show up at a bank, you've got a grand plan to rob this bank, and unbeknownst to you, they've closed the bank.
Right.
All the money is gone, and the only people left are like the moving crew that are just, clearing out the furniture. And you're like, I need all the money. And they're like, that left in a truck yesterday, dude. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, you still attempted to rob the bank, even if there wasn't any actual money to take.
You
So,
rob a bank believing it to be a bank, but it's not a bank. It's actually a movie set.
yeah,
What are you guilty of? And what are you guilty of? Attempted bank robbery.
yeah.
You thought it was a bank. Good enough. Oh, and actually, I had that. There was a case where we covered exactly that scenario, where a woman. I covered the scenario where a woman did a GPS drive like across the country with the idea of storming the White House, and she thought she stormed the White House, but she actually climbed the fence of the Treasury building, which is kind of across the street. And so, what's she guilty of? Well, she tried to enter the White House. So there you go.
And this needs to be contrasted with the other concept, which is legal impossibility.
Yeah.
So legal impossibility is like, let's say I think it's illegal to smuggle sugar. And so I load up my truck full of sugar. I get to the border. They say, hey, what have you got to declare? I say nothing. They say, cool. I go through. And I'm like, yeah, I got this sugar across the border. And it's like, but it's not actually illegal to smuggle sugar. So
yeah.
This is also why drug laws ban not just the selling of actual drugs, but also the selling of things that are held out as drugs. Or
you buy a teenth of cocaine from your street dealer, but it isn't cocaine, it's sugar, but you don't know that. So what are you guilty of? Attempted possession of narcotics.
And at least where I am, what is the dealer guilty of? Selling something that is
attempted distribution of narcotics. If they don't know,
here it's not actually attempted distribution. It's you probably could also charge that, but it's selling something that is held out to be cocaine, regardless of whether or not it's actually cocaine.
Yeah, that's probably illegal too.
They make it a crime separately to sell something as fake drugs. And I mean, there's good reason for that. Because people who sell fake drugs tend to...
that's fraud. You're tricking people. You're selling a product other than what it purports to be. You're lying to people and to induce them into a sale. That's fraud.
It also tends to result in real violence because like drug users who have been sold fake meth get angry. And they might use a real gun to express their
All
anger.
they need to do is file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, Consumer Protection Agency.
I did see a reported decision that I thought was pretty hilarious, though, which was this guy sold to an undercover, and he said that he was selling fake drugs. Like, he said he was selling, like, I've got some sugar, wink, wink. And it turned out to actually be sugar. But
he said it was sugar. I'm not sure what he's guilty of at that point.
Well, the undercover was saying, well, it was clearly, implied that this is actually, that this was actually drugs. And it's like, But he actually told you the thing he was selling, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. That might be
so
legal.
that person
I
ended
wouldn't
up walking.
necessarily recommend it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you go out with little dime bags full of sugar and say, I'm here to sell you sugar. I don't know if that necessarily would go well. So
This is the
yeah.
other one. Or in some cases, people being sold fake drugs called 911 to voice displeasure. That's
Yeah.
happened a number of times where
Yeah.
somebody's like, I bought drugs from this guy, and um, yeah, and then the police don't like that. I see AG saying the streams have been helping my legal terminology study for my court transcription license, hearing a lot of said terms used referring to court cases, between example, transcription aids, memory. Nice. So helping out with the court transcription. That's an important job, by the way. That's really important. So we need transcription. Thank you very much. Evil Critter says, "Come to Pennsylvania. Our liquor is held hostage." I don't know what that means.
Oh yeah, different states have different rules in terms of liquor sales, and Pennsylvania, at least historically, tends to be a little bit tighter in terms of who can sell liquor and not.
Oh,
So different states have different rules on that. I remember Pennsylvania being particularly onerous at some points. Who can sell beer? Who can sell wine? Who can sell liquor? Yeah.
I mean, where I am is pretty onerous. Sadly, it's like the grocery store can't sell liquor, but they can have on the same property a store that sells liquor under the same brand. So there's like the superstore grocery store and the superstore liquor store.
I've seen that before. I've actually seen a store within a store. I've seen one store do it that way.
Here, they can't be within each other. They can't actually be the same building, so they have to be separate. So in some cases, you see them with like literally like a 2-inch gap between the two buildings, which is a bad idea, because then once dirt gets in there, it's just there for life. But yeah, I see, to add to the dramatic evacuee week, my pup slipped the lock on the travel crate and had a party in Grand Prairie baggage room. They needed to page me for treats. I can laugh now. Oh, is that the pup? Because we got a pup picture there. So it sounds like Arctic Ginger was fleeing the fires, and the dog got out in the baggage room.
But Ian, if you ever need me to smuggle you some sugar or some coffee or something, in case Canada makes that illegal, let me know. I'll do my Great White North run. I'll get it right across I'll get it right across the no touching zone with the deforested border. Just launch it in a trebuchet.
I'm good for now. So, and Chris M96 says, I was going to send Rob a super chat because his college sports ball team plays next Thursday as good luck chat, but he isn't here, so I guess you get it. Also, go Tigers. I think that is.
Yeah.
All right. I'll make sure to pass it along. I hope Rob is currently in bed sleeping. Because Donna Doring, thank you very much for the new membership there. Zero Fucks, brief thoughts on fees/ticketing via traffic cams. I don't really like camera-based enforcement. I am concerned that we may get to a world where everything is monitored with the cameras that just automatically start dinging us and with various offenses. But Maria Olocino, Friday nights are the best. Last Friday I married the love of my life, and this Friday I get to catch a live with Runkle and friends. Congratulations on.
So which Friday is best Friday?
I'm hoping last Friday, or Saturday. I won't elaborate on that. I
think we all picked up what you were laying down there, right? Yeah.
Fair, yeah, I'm not sure I was terribly subtle. And I've also got a bunch of gifted memberships to go through, but remember to do all of the YouTube things. There's a bunch of buttons down below. Hit all of them except for the down arrow. The down arrow is lava. The rest of them are great buttons to hit. So I see
even the down arrow is engagement. So
it's true. I see Rhineman YYC. Thank you for 10 memberships. Joshua Ten Hog, thank you for 10 memberships. Sandra D, thank you for 5 memberships. Joshua Ten Hog, thank you for another 10 memberships. Wesley Hoke, thank you for 5 memberships. Angie Torres, thank you for 10 memberships. And Just Because, thank you for 10 memberships. All right. Let's do a swoop again. Oop. And we got Prototopics in the chat here. And I see, can we get a balls in order of Corey's 12th? Yes, we can. And I guess because so people who don't know it, we just passed the anniversary of Corey's, what would have been Corey's 12th birthday. So I guess the swoop we'll do is, I guess I've got a Corey swoop. It's about 40 seconds long, but we'll do it anyway. And then we'll talk about Rittenhouse. Because Rittenhouse is, there's some stuff with that. But all right, here we go.
What was that?
That was a video I made a bit ago, just as a thing to honor Corey. But people were saying like, "Hey, because we just passed his birthday, I'll roll that one there." But so let's talk about Rittenhouse, because Rittenhouse is getting sued.
Yeah, what
again.
Else
Oh well, he's getting sued again. By the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum.
Really?
Really. Now, if you remember, Joseph Rosenbaum is the first person who got shot in that particular altercation. And he got shot and killed after he was there. He was seen, amongst other things, threatening to kill Kyle beforehand.
The state's witnesses said that. They said that they was threatening to kill him, and we saw him chase him down, and
we saw him like starting fires and being upset that Rittenhouse was putting out fires. And we also know that Rosenbaum was released from a mental hospital just before this, and basically went directly from the mental hospital to a riot. And I mean, that wasn't part of the trial. That was not allowed in at the trial. But he was, So Rosenbaum had been released from custody. He'd gotten very depressed after he was released from prison. And then he went to a mental hospital, got released from that. And then he went to, then he went to a riot. And
is this the same lawsuit as before, basically, where we're just trying to charge Rittenhouse along with the people in some sort of vast conspiracy, blah blah blah? Is this the same cause of action I saw a year ago from the different guy from Grauskowitz? Is it just Grauskowitz with Rosenbaum's name in place?
Pretty much, because it's actually the same lawyer.
Okay, so I already know it's bullshit without reading one word.
We're gonna read it anyway, though. They filed it the last day that it was able to be filed. Just as the statute of limitations is expiring, they filed this.
Has it been? Yeah, I guess it might be. Yeah.
So, and Rosenbaum, is not a guy who's going to be missed by a lot of people, because Rosenbaum was in custody for sex offenses. While he was in custody, he was noted to be violent. So let's see.
Well, at least on the plus side, I mean, Rittenhouse can just copy paste all the work that he's already done from the Grauskowitz case. So
and probably some additional stuff about Rosenbaum. So complaint. Now comes plaintiff, the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum by counsel, Motley Legal Services. Motley Legal Services.
That is, by the way.
Yeah. And and complains against David G. Beth in his individual and official capacity as Kenosha County Sheriff, Daniel G. Miskinnis in his official and individual and official capacity as the former Chief of Police for the Kenosha Police Department, Patrick D. Patton in his official capacity as the Acting Chief of Police for the Kenosha Police Department, and John Doe police officers, the Kenosha Police Department and Kenosha County Sheriff's Department, Waukesha County Sheriff's Department, Racine County Sheriff's Department, Sauk County Sheriff's Department, Walworth County Sheriff's Department, Washington County Sheriff's Department, Menominee Falls Police Department, and West Allis Police Department.
How does some of these people even get theoretically involved is beyond me, but okay.
Yeah, and it goes on. Cities of Kenosha, County of Kenosha, Waukesha, Racine, Sauk, Walworth, that's all the places. And Kyle Rittenhouse. So they're suing Kyle Rittenhouse, but they're also suing everyone they can think of.
Paragraph 1. This case involves the tragic death of Joseph Rosenbaum, a father and community member who was shot and killed August 25th, 2020.
Now, did he have custody of his kids? I kind of doubt it.
That's one way to describe it, I guess.
I mean, everybody is a community member. I see Waukesha, I see is... I mean, everybody's a member of, is a community member. If you are in solitary confinement, you are a community member. So, yes, he is technically a community member, and I guess technically he had kids. I would quite honestly start out my statement of defense by saying it is disputed that the death is tragic.
No, I'm there. I was thinking the same thing.
Like, we agree that he was a father, or we have no knowledge of him being a father. We admit he's a community member. We admit he was shot and killed August 25th, 2020. We dispute that it was tragic. On August 25th, 2020, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Rosenbaum was participating in protests against police violence, which were sparked by the police shooting of Jacob Blake 2 days earlier. Participating is an interesting word. Like, he was setting fires, he was going out and threatening people, he was doing violence. Mr. Blake was a black man who'd been shot in the back 7 times by an officer in the Kenosha Police Department, which is completely irrelevant to this case, but okay. Rosenbaum was among many who peacefully protested the shooting in Kenosha's pattern of racist and violent behavior by police officers and other officials. That statement is the most technically correct statement I've ever seen. He was among many who had peacefully protested the shooting. He himself did not peacefully protest the shooting. But I'm sure that there were many people around him that did, and he was among them in the sense of them being around him. So it is very, very technically correct. Which in this case is not the best form of correct. During the protest, private citizens took up arms and patrolled the streets of Kenosha, acting as law enforcement agents. Many of them had posted racist messages and threatened violence on social media before descending upon Kenosha. Note that they're not saying Kyle did, they're just saying others did. So, yeah. Somebody's saying, could I have picked a more divisive topic? I mean, the thing is we're going to look at this lawsuit, and you don't have to like Rittenhouse. Lots of people don't like Rittenhouse. They don't like.
It's not a divisive topic. The lawsuit is dumb and stupid.
But at the end of the day, Rittenhouse was clearly in self-defense.
Yeah.
It is one of the most clear self-defense cases that you could name. And I will defend that point.
We're not allowed to cover divisive things on LawTube. That's going to really hamper our flow, because I hate to point out the obvious, but every single case is almost definitionally divisive because there are kind of two sides to every case.
And there's always somebody who wishes a case went a different direction. So they made their plans known to law enforcement officials. These armed individuals were not Kenosha business owners whose property had been damaged, nor were they hired by any of the businesses to come protect their property. I think that's in dispute, because I actually wasn't there evidence that the car dealership had asked them to be there?
The key word there was hired.
They did it as volunteers. They weren't paid.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
Rosenbaum was among many who peacefully protested the shooting and Kenosha's pattern of racist and violent behavior by police officers and other officials, by like trying to set fire to a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
During the protest, private citizens took up arms and patrolled the streets of Kenosha, acting as law enforcement agents. You already said that. Many of them had posted racist messages and threatened violence on social media before descending upon Kenosha.
Mm-hmm.
They made their plans known to law enforcement officials. Am I getting deja vu?
No, it's the same thing twice.
Paragraph 3 and paragraph 6 are the same paragraph.
Yeah.
And paragraph
Also, just on a pure stylistic note, why is the period like 2 spaces after the numeral? What's that all about? What's with the spacing?
Know. And paragraph 7 is the same as paragraph 4.
This entire lawsuit's copy and paste from Grauskowitz.
I'm guessing that this was rushed out the door for the last day of filing. Because that's how you make these mistakes.
It's like you had plenty of time to file it.
I have a theory about that.
Ooh, do tell.
I bet Rosenbaum's family was hesitant to sign on to this lawsuit. And possibly he was like, this is your last day to get money. And they might have gone, okay, file it. We can always drop it later, right? So, yeah. And I see ABQ Cat. The smell test for me never survives Rittenhouse crossing state lines with intent to shoot people. He didn't cross state lines. He drove 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I drive further to get to the courthouse than Rittenhouse did to get to that scene. And intent to shoot people, he sure tried to avoid shooting people. Like, he actually could have shot a lot more people in that scenario and not been convicted. He did his best to not shoot people. I probably would have shot some of the people he didn't shoot. Like the guy who goes and starts attacking him and is like, whoa, 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 and backs up, who Kyle never shoots, who leaves. Like, I might have still taken that shot. I might have, for instance, fired a further follow-up shot on Grosskreutz. Because it's like, oh, he's still got a gun, even though I've shot his arm. I probably would have shot until he was down, not just, because, I would have been really concerned about turning my back on a guy like that. All right. So, yeah, they've got that. Now we're going to get to a new paragraph, a new fresh paragraph. So if you want to watch old coverage of the trial, Nick Rakita covered it, corner, like end to end. So one of these armed individuals was defendant Kyle Rittenhouse, who was then 17 years old. He crossed into Wisconsin from Illinois, carrying an assault rifle on the streets of Kenosha in open violation of the law. He lived basically right at the border, and tons of people in Kenosha live exactly where he lived. Like, this is... I just look at things like we've got a town here, the town of Lloydminster in Alberta. Shout out to anyone from Lloydminster. Lloydminster is directly on the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. It's like midway through the town. And so literally you can just you can end up crossing the provincial border driving to go get milk, right? That's, yeah. And they're trying to imply that he, crossed state lines with the gun. He didn't. And also carrying an assault rifle on the streets of Kenosha, the gun charge was thrown out because the judge agreed that there was no way that they could support the gun charge because it was just obviously not true. Like, by their facts of things, that was not a crime. So, yep. All right. Astonishingly, the Kenosha Police Department, Kenosha County Sheriff's Department, their supervising officials and police officers and law enforcement officers from surrounding communities did not treat defendant Rittenhouse or any of the other armed individuals patrolling the streets as a threat to the safety of themselves or the citizens they were sworn to protect. I mean, maybe if they'd started setting fire to gas stations, I don't know. Instead, the law enforcement defendants deputized these armed individuals. Did you ever hear anything about Rittenhouse being deputized?
I've heard them try to make these kinds of claims. Yeah.
Deputy Rittenhouse?
Which, incidentally, if that's true, would give him qualified immunity because it would be a civil case. So if it's true that he was deputized, then how about qualified immunity, I guess?
I hadn't thought of that one, but entertaining. I like it. Conspired with them and ratified their actions by letting them patrol the streets armed with deadly weapons to mete out justice as they saw fit. I don't think that's actually what they specified, but in addition, the law enforcement defendants thanked defendant Rittenhouse and other armed individuals, gave them water, and allowed them to openly defy the emergency curfew.
Wow, the police gave people water, man. Wow. The criminal conspiracy is real.
I suspect that the police were tossing out water generally, but I don't know. The law enforcement defendants even made plans to funnel the protesters towards the armed individuals, deal with them. They accidentally
they accidentally some spaces. They accidentally some numbering. The numbering is wrong.
They accidentally a lot of things. Like, this is just a mess. Yeah, 8.
Because we went from 10 8. Back to 8 and 9 again. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're exactly right. The way you get to this is they're copying and pasting from another document, and it's effing up their formatting. As a result, defendant Rittenhouse fired his assault rifle. It's not actually an assault rifle. Indiscriminately. Actually, it was not indiscriminate.
To tell you, man, that was pretty discriminate. He was one of the most discriminate self-defense people I've ever seen in my life. Given the situation he was under, I'd be hard-pressed for him to be much more discriminate.
I compete doing 3-gun, which is like fast shooting, under pressure, and so forth. I come middle of the pack in a lot of these shooting competitions, which means I beat a lot of the other people who suck. But I don't beat any of the people who are remotely good. But I still, so
I've done a little pistol shooting competitive, and he kicked my ass.
I could not have shot as well as he did in terms of, and I can tell you, I could pick randomly 20 cops from across the US. And I don't think any of them could do as well on a no-shoot drill as he did.
Yeah, jokes.
Every single person who was approaching him, if they went and said, like, the people who went like, whoa, I want out, he didn't shoot. He didn't shoot when people were retreating. When Grosskreutz indicated surrender, he was like, okay, I'm not shooting you anymore. And then when Grosskreutz was like, sucker, I'm going to shoot you instead, he was like, okay, game back on. And shot him. It was incredibly, it was the opposite of indiscriminate. Joseph Rosenbaum was the first person killed by defendant Rittenhouse. And unfortunately, after this, defendant Rittenhouse would kill Anthony Huber, seriously injure Gage Grosskreutz, and narrowly miss shooting a fourth man. What was Joseph Rosenbaum doing at the time?
At the time, let's see, how would we characterize this? At the time, he was trying to vocalize his First Amendment by having a colloquy with Mr. Rittenhouse, who was, in all defiance of civility, trying to evade his quips and scurrilous barbs that were so justly earned. And as he tried to, continue the conversation with increasing passion, he was unjustly slain. How am I
I might
doing?
go. He was trying to exercise his Second Amendment rights, but unfortunately, it was Rittenhouse who had the gun. So he was trying to Second Amendment that gun away from Rittenhouse. That's a thing, right? Your Second Amendment gives you the right to take somebody else's gun, somebody who you've been threatening to kill all evening. I just as a important
It wasn't that he
safety.
was threatening to kill him. He was suggesting some redress for perceived slights using the language of the youth. I'll
I'm just
work on it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. There's two strategies for dealing with what lawyers might call hard facts. And hard facts are basically any of the things in a case that go against your narrative. And one of those strategies is you dive right into it, right? You just say, okay, here's the hard facts. I got to deal with this. Let's address it. Let's talk about it, and let's, and say basically, I don't think this is fatal to my case. Like, I know this is going to be tough for me, but I still here's how we overcome our hurdle. And that tends to be the approach you take when you think you can overcome the hurdle, right? When you think you've actually got an argument for that. When you don't think you have an argument for that, you tend to adopt a different strategy, which is pretend it doesn't exist. Like, pretend the problems with your case are just not problems at all.
I like my answer. Recharacterize everything in a positive light.
And yeah, I mean, the thing is you can say that Kyle should have stayed home. Lots of people say that, and you may be right. It's actually not even what Binger said, because Binger indicated that Kyle had the right to be there. Binger also ended up conceding that he had the right, so he's like, yeah, he's got the right to be there. That's not a problem. But most self-defense cases involve somebody who is doing something stupid. In fact, a lot of self-defense cases are people who are outright engaging in criminal activity. So that is the nature of
a lot of
self-defense.
Self-defense cases are crap because people just say self-defense because they got nothing else to do.
But the thing
incidentally,
is,
it has somewhat of a tendency of causing judges to turn it out, because the claim of self-defense is almost invariably bullshit.
But
and
you
so
don't have to
judges
be
get jaded like everyone else.
You don't have to be a perfect defendant to claim self-defense. There's all sorts of scenarios where you might be engaging in bad behavior and still have a right to self-defense. So that people have sort of taken that as definitive, and it's not definitive at all in this case. So it's frustrating, some of the dialogue, because some of the dialogue just really goes against what the law says. Let's carry on. Tragically, again, that word, Joseph Rosenbaum died when defendant Rittenhouse shot him. Agreed that, that Rittenhouse shot him and killed him. Disagree that that it was tragic. Rosenbaum, had he continued to live, would probably have continued to, for instance, offend against children. So,
okay, how do I recharacterize that in a more positive light? He would have continued to engage with the youth and
youth outreach activities.
Youth outreach activities, yes. There you go.
No. The conduct of the defendants in this case directly caused Joseph Rosenbaum's death. The estate of Joseph Rosenbaum now seeks justice. No, you don't. No, you don't. So, yeah. Um, nature of the action. This is a civil action arising under law and under state law for deprivation of plaintiffs' constitutional, statutory, and state law rights. All right, so basically, he wants money because he says that all sorts of lawsuit there. So jurisdiction, we're going to skip over because jurisdiction is pretty
Jurisdiction's some
easy.
bullshit.
It isn't. I mean, they're just suing where it happened. That fine.
But
Parties.
they can't really bring Kyle into this. But
Yeah, I mean, Kyle is going to be a headache on this one. Plaintiff estate of Joseph Rosenbaum is suing defendants. Defendant David C. Betts was sheriff of Kenosha. We're going to skip over a lot of the party stuff because we know who these people are. Like, police officers are police officers. The city of Kenosha is a city called Kenosha. But let's see how they describe Mr. Rittenhouse. Oh, really briefly. Upon information and belief, defendant Kyle Rittenhouse is a citizen of Texas who shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum on August 25th, 2020. Do you need a separate citizenship for Texas?
Depends on what basis we're trying to bring this in. If it were diversity citizenship, but I don't even know what theory we're bringing it in. We're trying to bring it in under 42 SC 1983 as he's a state actor. So I guess hypothetically, no, we don't need it, but why not throw it in there, I guess.
So
where does Kyle live now?
I don't know. I think he moved a few times because he really wants to be, it's tough for him to live where he was.
I'm sure. Texas is a big state. We'll be happy to have him.
So, facts. Kenosha police shoot Jacob Blake, sparking protests. You do not have a cause of action for shooting Jacob Blake. Upon information
Jacob Blake doesn't have a cause of action for shooting Jacob Blake.
Well, they're pretending it. Upon information and belief, on August 23rd, 2020, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, KPD officer Rustin Shesky shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times without justification. Okay, I don't know the Jacob Blake story that much.
Yeah, I do.
But
yeah.
Neighbors and other concerned residents of Kenosha demonstrated in protest against the shooting of Jacob Blake. Demonstrators initially gathered at the site where Mr. Blake was shot. When video of the KPD shooting of Blake was released, it sparked public outrage. That evening, hundreds of additional demonstrators gathered in downtown Kenosha to protest. Officers from the KPD and KCSD were dispatched to monitor the demonstrations, police the actions of individuals present, and disperse the crowds. The KPD and KCSD officers at the scene were antagonistic towards the demonstrators, who were voicing their outrage at the racist and systemic violence conducted by the very officers who were policing the demonstrations, and also, some fires.
Little light arson.
So an emergency overnight curfew of 10:15 p.m. was put in place. The curfew was aimed at protesters, and not actually directed at or enforced against others in the city violating the order. Okay, I mean, that's fair. You can say, hey, we're upset by this was disproportionate enforcement. Officers from the KPD and KCSD fired tear gas and rubber bullets into the crowds to break up the demonstrations, and they arrested many demonstrators. Ironically, if Rosenbaum had been arrested there, he'd be alive today. If he'd gone home when the tear gas was out there, he'd be alive today. Yeah. On Monday, August 24th, 2020, the demonstrations continued. Defendant Beth put in place an 8 p.m. curfew. Again, the curfew was aimed at protesters. That curfew remained in effect on August 25th, 2020. You will note this case was filed today, August 25th, 2023.
Yep.
So right at limitation periods.
Yep.
On August 25th...
Has it really been 3 years? Wow. How time goes.
It's true. On August 25th, 2020, in addition to the officers from KPD and KCSD, additionally responding departments deployed officers and equipment to participate in the response and control the protests in Kenosha. The additionally responding officers joined forces with the KPD and KCSD and worked under the Coordination and Tactical Command. Okay. They also deployed SWAT. And in addition, they deployed equipment, including service weapons and crowd control tools such as pepper spray, tear gas, and so-called non-lethal weapons such as beanbag shotguns and rubber bullets. The additionally responding departments...
They don't typically call it non-lethal.
They call it less than lethal or less lethal.
Yeah.
And the reason why they call it that is that you can absolutely get killed by a rubber bullet.
Yeah, especially if you hit someone in the temple or something like that. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Yeah, you get domed
or it hits
with a
you
rubber
just the
bullet.
wrong way or something. It can cause a problem. Crack a crib or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're 80 and you're a little more fragile, and they decide to tag you with a rubber bullet, right? If they're not, yeah. The additionally responding departments also provided armored military vehicles designed for use in war, including Bearcats and mine-resistant ambush-protected trucks, MRAPs. Oh, they're going to hammer on the war thing here. They're going to hammer on that. So,
why don't we just sue the Defense Department while we're at it? That'd be good.
Don't give them ideas. At various times, they use these tools on or against protesters. They say tear gas is a chemical weapon that the United States military is banned from using under the 1925 Geneva Protocol and the United States Chemical Weapons Convention that went into effect in 1997. And this is false. The United States military...
That doesn't sound right. Tear gas?
United States... they're banned from using it against combatants. You're banned from using it against other militaries. But you are specifically permitted to use it as a riot agent. That's in those conventions. Like, that's in the protocol. That's allowed. So when they're trying to say, oh, yeah, this is, this is banned, it's like, actually, the United States military can still use it on rioters. Like, that's allowed. The reason why you can't use it in war isn't because it's super effective. It's actually because it's not very effective and just considered at that point just like that you're just out to hurt people. So the other thing is that tear gas is used so often in military training.
Yep.
The Canadian Army just recently bought something like another 100,000 units of tear gas. And people were freaking out going, what are they using it for? And I'm like, they use it to teach people how to put on their gas masks, right? That's really what they do with it. You go and you sit in an airtight thing, and they drop tear gas in there, and then you have to put on your mask while you're being tear gassed. Like, that's sort of what they're doing there. And I see Joe, I know this isn't what you meant, but it almost sounds like you're allowed to shoot someone for lighting property on fire that isn't even yours. Also, police should not be treated like military. The police are allowed to do some things that the military is not.
Yeah.
For example,
hollow point ammo is legal for the police, but not for the military.
In fact, just about every police officer will be using hollow point ammunition.
Yeah.
It's standard, but the military is not allowed to use it. Tear gas is, it's allowed for use as a riot agent, and police deal with riots a lot more often than the military do. So they use a lot more of it. And you're not allowed to shoot someone for lighting property on fire. You are allowed to defend property. And if somebody in the course of you defending property goes and tries to kill you, then you're allowed to defend yourself. So in this case, Rosenbaum was clearly trying to kill Rittenhouse. He threatened to kill him repeatedly. And he basically said, if I catch you alone, I will kill you. He caught Rittenhouse alone. He was chasing Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse was running away as fast as he could. When Rittenhouse ran out of distance to run away, that's when he turned and fired. So that's you're allowed to defend yourself is the thing there. All right. Defendants know armed individuals plan to patrol Kenosha and have threatened harm to citizens. The demonstrations continued into August 25th, 2020. That evening, armed individuals descended on Kenosha. They could be seen patrolling the streets in and around the demonstrations, brandishing weapons, threatening residents, and pointing weapons at peaceful demonstrators without provocation. They never did manage to establish Rittenhouse pointing a firearm at anybody.
Yeah.
Until people were coming after him. The armed individuals had arrived in part based on a Facebook post by Kevin Mathewson on behalf of a militia group he formed called the Kenosha Guard. Mathewson put out a call on Facebook for patriots willing to take up arms and defend our city tonight against the evil thugs. He received hundreds of online responses, including many hundreds of people indicating that they would be attending. The responders to Mathewson's post made clear that they intended to patrol the demonstration armed and with the intent to kill. Responses included the following.
With the intent to kill.
Were any of these Rittenhouse, is the question. Yeah. Counter-protest? Nah, I fully plan to kill looters and rioters tonight. I have my suppressor on my AR. These fools won't even know what hit them. So people mouth off online. It's about time. Now it's time to switch to real bullets and put a stop to these impetuous children rioting. Use hollow points. They expand on contact. Armed and ready, shoot to kill tonight. How many of those people were even in Kenosha? Yeah.
Probably not many.
Yeah.
Keyboard Warrior Brigade.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there's always the Keyboard Warrior Brigade. I've had a bunch of people threaten to kill me in email.
Really?
So far, oh yeah, I get an above average number of death threats.
Wow.
Especially from anti-gun people, believe it or not.
I believe it.
As of yet, none of them have killed me. So, all of you guys with the threats, you suck at what you do. All right. Defendants knew about the plans and intentions of the armed individuals. I think they mean the police here. Including the social media posts and the plans and intentions of the pro-militia armed individuals that descended on downtown Kenosha. Mathewson, as a former Kenosha alderman, was known to the defendants and speaks regularly with defendant Miskinus. Okay. Mathewson, calling himself the commander of the Kenosha Guard, emailed defendant Miskinus and Joseph Nosalik, KPD's public information officer. The email stated, Chief Miskinus, as you know, I am commander of the Kenosha Guard, a local militia. Don't ever call yourself a militia. It's a bad idea.
Try something else.
Community group. We are mobilizing tonight, and we have about 3,000 RSVPs. We have volunteers that will be in Uptown, downtown, and at the entrances to other neighborhoods. Do they really have a neighborhood called Uptown?
New York does.
Huh.
Uptown girl, you're living in an uptown world.
Mathewson also posted the email as an open letter to the Kenosha Chief of Police on social media. The email and social media post made clear that these volunteers would not be there to protect their own homes or businesses and that they had not been hired by any local business to secure property. Instead, they intended to patrol the streets, acting as armed law enforcement officials. Okay, but did Rittenhouse do these things, or was Rittenhouse there to defend a specific piece of property? Neither defendant Miskinus nor defendant Beth made any attempt to dissuade Mathewson or any other armed individuals from showing up in Kenosha to patrol the streets, because they actually have a right to be there. You have a right to counter-protest.
Yep.
And in many parts of the U.S., you have a right to be armed while you're counter-protesting. It's a thing that happens. You see a lot of protests now where there's two sides who are armed, and for the most part, they end up still being peaceful somehow. So defendants Miskinus and Beth acknowledged that the KPD and KCSD were aware that pro-militia armed individuals intended to patrol and then did patrol downtown Kenosha. The other departments and their officers were also fully aware that there were pro-militia armed individuals patrolling downtown Kenosha. This was obvious to them when on scene. Indeed, one of the additionally responding officers wrote in his report from the night of August 25th, 2020, that throughout the night they observed pro-militia groups armed, mostly with long guns, in the area of 60th and Sheridan. And now we get to Defendant Rittenhouse shoots Joseph Rosenbaum and two others. Among the armed individuals who arrived in Kenosha on August 25th was Defendant Kyle Rittenhouse. Defendant Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old from Antioch, Illinois. By his appearance, Defendant Rittenhouse was obviously a minor, which might have been why Rosenbaum took such an interest.
Obviously a minor? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got carded well into my 30s. I still occasionally get carded buying alcohol. But, yeah. Defendant Rittenhouse possessed a Smith & Wesson AR-15 style .223 rifle with a magazine holding 30 rounds of ammunition. This weapon was developed in the late 1950s as a weapon of war.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was developed as the civilian version of something. And the civilian version means that it doesn't do the things that the military version does. Defendant Rittenhouse was brandishing his gun openly and conspicuously, strapping it over his shoulder using a tactical sling designed to position the rifle at the center of the chest for rapid elevation and positioning, i.e., we call this a sling. Like, yeah. Okay. The rifle was visible at all times across his body or in his hands. I have used very similar slings for hunting. Like, it's just a sling, guys. Defendant Rittenhouse was in clear violation of the law, which prohibits a minor from possessing or displaying such a gun.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't, and like that argument was so bad that it was thrown out at trial.
Yep.
So
should have been thrown out a lot earlier, but eventually got thrown out. Yeah.
Numerous KPD and KCSD officers saw Defendant Rittenhouse before and after the shootings that night, as did many of the additionally responding officers. Despite being in clear violation of Wisconsin law, Defendant Rittenhouse was not asked for identification, was not questioned, was never detained, and was not disarmed, because they couldn't actually have done any of those things. But, yeah. Instead, the law enforcement defendants allowed Defendant Rittenhouse to patrol the streets of downtown Kenosha with his deadly assault rifle. They invited him in, deputized him, conspired with him, and ratified his actions. I don't think that they did any of those things. I think that they
I don't think they really did any of those things.
Like, you know, he's clearly not deputized, for example.
Does he get a pension now because he's law enforcement? How's that work?
I don't know. Maybe he should be getting stress pay. Actually, maybe they should have been paying his legal costs if he was a deputy.
That'd be good. Yeah, look at the police union to defend your costs, because obviously I was deputized.
Yeah, exactly. As a result of the law enforcement defendants' action within the zone they controlled, Defendant Rittenhouse shot at 4 Kenosha area residents, killing 2 of them and seriously injuring a third. What were they doing at the time?
They were using Robert's Rules of Order to have a civilized parliamentary discussion about the finer points of unfortunate events in town.
At around 11 p.m., without provocation or any legal justification, Defendant Rittenhouse pointed his gun at an unarmed demonstrator heading to his car to go home. That never actually seemed to be borne out at the trial. Like, Binger tried to argue that, but it didn't actually look like that at all. Nope. At around 11:45, Defendant Rittenhouse shot Joseph Rosenbaum in the parking lot of an auto dealership. Rosenbaum was killed. No details about what was happening at all. Joseph Rosenbaum was not a danger to himself or others, and Rittenhouse used unjustified excessive force in shooting and killing him. He had threatened to kill Rittenhouse and was chasing him. Like,
Yes.
Rittenhouse was running as fast as his legs could carry him, and watching that video, the thing I always am reminded of, and I'm sorry to Rittenhouse or the people that this might annoy, but have you seen the the Simpsons episode with what is it, Gunter going, "Don't make me run, I'm full of chocolate." That's kind of what it reminds me of.
That's unfair. That's unfair. You take that back.
He's doing his best to run. He's terrified. He doesn't look like he's in the greatest of shape. And he just runs out of running distance. Like, he gets cornered. And at that point, he's being charged by this guy who has threatened to kill him and is trying to take his gun to kill him. It should also be noted that Rosenbaum is considered to be, dangerous in a whole lot of circumstances. If you look at his disciplinary record in prison, which got released, he did a lot of attacking guards, including attacking guards with a noxious substance.
Was he, what do they call that? I'm trying to remember. Was he flinging biological material at them?
That's clearly what he was doing.
Do they call it like gassing? What's it called?
Gassing sometimes. Where I am, they often just call it shit bombing.
Okay.
There's all sorts of terms they call it, but I mean, it is pretty obnoxious behavior. So yeah. So there's no justification.
I want to get my prison nomenclature right. And they use the word nomenclature, I'm sure. Yeah.
There's no justification for defendant Rittenhouse to shoot and kill Joseph Rosenbaum.
There really is.
There really was,
on levels.
It was very obvious at the trial that there was. Instead of seeking medical attention or any other form of aid for his unlawful act, defendant Rittenhouse called his friend Dominic Black. He told Black that he just killed someone and then ran away. Now, if you see that, he is being surrounded by a very angry mob. So what's he supposed to be doing for medical attention? I don't know. Defendant Rittenhouse ran from the scene that he created after shooting Joseph Rosenbaum with his assault rifle in his hands, holding it in a ready position. People were yelling that defendant Rittenhouse had just shot Rosenbaum. So you just provided the reason why he would run away.
Yeah, right.
Defendant Rittenhouse stumbled and fell to the ground, and several citizens approached him in an attempt to disarm him. Specifically, they wanted to disarm him by beating his skull in with a skateboard or by shooting him in the face. Anthony Huber was one of the individuals who approached defendant Rittenhouse to disarm him. We don't actually have any testimony that was his intention because we can't. Stop the shooting and save the lives of others. You can't know what his intention was. Anthony Huber was a hero. Maybe. I don't know what Huber, but yeah. As Anthony was reaching for defendant Rittenhouse's rifle to pull it away, without provocation or any legal justification, defendant Rittenhouse shot him in the chest. Note what's in his hands here. What he is swinging at Rittenhouse's head. And in fact, had hit Rittenhouse with. So, no kidding, he gets shot. If you go after an armed person with a bludgeon that is capable of killing them, they are probably going to shoot you.
Yeah.
After Anthony was shot, Gage Grosskreutz approached defendant Rittenhouse with his hands up. Actually, he approached Rittenhouse with his gun out, pleaded with him to stop his shooting rampage. That wasn't even Grosskreutz's testimony at trial.
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
Without provocation or any legal justification, defendant Rittenhouse shot at Grosskreutz from point-blank range, hitting him in the arm. Thankfully, Grosskreutz survived. Grosskreutz testified that Rittenhouse didn't shoot him.
Isn't it true that it's when you brought your gun up, not down by your side, but when your gun brought up, that, Rittenhouse shot you? Yes. And then pulling my legal mindset, that's it. Directed verdict.
Yeah, it was just like, yep, Gage Grosskreutz was a hero. Look up Gage Grosskreitz's impaired driving arrest and see if he seems like a hero.
A hero.
I
A
mean,
hero. I'd ask how, but I'm not sure I want to know the answer.
yeah.
A hero.
The law enforcement
If
defendants...
Gage Grosskreutz is a hero, we have some very loose definitions of the term hero.
The law enforcement defendants authorized defendant Rittenhouse's shootings. The law enforcement defendants did nothing to stop defendant Rittenhouse's illegal conduct. They did not arrest him for illegally carrying a gun because he wasn't illegally carrying a gun. They did not disarm him, which they couldn't. He's got his Second Amendment right to that. What is it? They did not question him. They did not stop him from shooting individuals after he started. They did not arrest him, detain him, or question him even after he killed 2 people. Instead, the law enforcement defendants deputized defendant Rittenhouse and other armed individuals. Again, how did they do this? And ratified their actions by allowing them to patrol the streets armed illegally with deadly weapons and shoot and kill innocent citizens. Among other things, the law enforcement defendants directed their curfew order only at people protesting the law enforcement defendants' own police violence and not at defendant Rittenhouse and others who were supporters of law enforcement. I'm just going to say they weren't able to enforce their, they weren't able to enforce their curfew at all. Like, because if you had the notion that they could enforce the curfew, why were any people there?
Yeah.
So, for example, at 9:57, a Kenosha police sergeant sent a message to all officers through to the department's internal messaging system, noting the presence of armed individuals patrolling the streets in violation of the curfew order. The additionally responding officers were also fully aware of the presence of armed individuals patrolling the streets in violation of the curfew order, based on their observation of their presence throughout the night and their participation in a coordinated tactical command. Rather than take any steps to detain, dissuade, or disarm these armed individuals, the KPD sergeant made clear that the pro-police armed individuals were not to be detained, dissuaded, or disarmed, calling the armed individuals in blatant violation of the curfew order very friendly, i.e. they weren't causing trouble. Although they say callers reported that some of the pro-police armed individuals had slashed tires in a nearby area. But the defendants did nothing in response to this conduct, let alone arrest the perpetrators. How were they supposed to do that exactly?
The situation was a little chaotic.
Yeah, I mean, somebody slashed tires. Great, we're going to find that person in this giant mess. But to the contrary, one of the additionally responding officers on a text thread with others titled Tactical Enforcement Unit Command Only wrote, "Gotta love counter-protesters slashing tires." Police say lots of stupid things. And fair enough. Instead, at approximately 11:30 p.m., about 15 minutes before defendant Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum, Huber, and Grosskreutz, several law enforcement defendants were talking to defendant Rittenhouse and the other armed individuals who had congregated in the parking lot of a private business. Despite the fact that armed individuals were in violation of the curfew orders, the officers and deputies communicated their full support and appreciation for defendant Rittenhouse and others. I don't think that they were actually sending anyone home per the curfew. Like, I saw lots of video and police were not like arresting people for the curfew and so forth. So, yeah. But in video footage taken at the scene, officers could even be heard asking armed individuals if they needed water. Defendant Rittenhouse can be seen telling the officers that they did need water, which officers gave them. And
wow.
what we also heard is that Rittenhouse passed out water to other people who looked thirsty.
That proves that he's part of the conspiracy, and the police gave him water. He passed along the water. He's part of the water brigade.
Defendant Rittenhouse walked right up to the police vehicles. Despite his obviously tender age, he was not asked for identification to demonstrate that he could lawfully possess an assault rifle.
Tender age.
Yeah, I don't know that this... Yeah. Officers working for the law enforcement defendants not only provided armed individuals with water, but they voiced their support and appreciation for the actions of defendant Rittenhouse and others, saying, "We appreciate you guys, we really do." Needless to say, the law enforcement defendants did not offer assistance or appreciation to any protesters. At the same time, the officers were handing out assistance and praise to the armed individuals, including Defendant Rittenhouse. They can be heard over loudspeakers in their armored vehicles ordering the protesters to disperse. This is the last warning. You will disperse, and this area is closed. You are trespassing. Leave now. No such warnings or threats were made to the armed individuals. Okay, fair. The law enforcement defendants deliberately orchestrated these circumstances, but how does that get you to the death? A clear message was sent that they perceived protesters were required to disperse, while armed individuals who supported law enforcement could roam free and assist the officers. These events directly led to Joseph Rosenbaum's death. It's a stretch.
It's beyond a stretch. It's so dumb.
Yeah. Before the fatal shootings, one of the armed individuals was interviewed. He said the following: "You know what the cops told us today? They were like, we're going to push them down by you because you can deal with them, and then we're going to leave." And that is exactly what happened. The law enforcement defendants ordered the protesters to move south, funneling them into a confined area where they were met by the violence perpetrated by Defendant Rittenhouse and the other armed individuals. Internal communications and reports from members of the law enforcement defendants reveal that they knew the pro-police armed individuals had gathered around 60th and Sheridan, yet they deliberately funneled protesters out of the park near 56th and Sheridan and forced them south right into the militia group they knew to be pro-police, in violation of the curfew order, slashing tires and armed with long guns. At all times, the law enforcement defendants, Defendant Rittenhouse, and others knew and understood what it meant when they told heavily armed private citizens to deal with the protesters. In this manner, the law enforcement defendants, Defendant Rittenhouse, and others arrived at a plan to collectively use force and state authority against the protesters. This theory that they were trying to get the armed people to shoot the protesters seems to be pure fantasy. Like, it just didn't happen. For example, Defendant Rittenhouse's own lawyer stated the police maneuvered a mass of individuals down the street toward the auto shops where the armed individuals had gathered. As a result, the law enforcement defendants invited, deputized, authorized, conspired with, and ratified the actions of Defendant Rittenhouse. They keep using that deputized word. Yeah. A boy illegally in possession of an assault rifle. Again, that was not what Judge Schrader found.
An assault rifle. He wasn't illegally in possession of it. We've been through this.
Who roamed the street in violation of an emergency curfew order, shooting innocent civilians. Innocent is debatable.
No, it's not.
Huber, maybe. Grosskreutz, no. Rosenbaum, definitely no. Killing two, seriously injuring a third, and narrowly missing a fourth. To make matters worse, when Rosenbaum, Huber, and Grosskreutz were shot, the law enforcement defendants were at the scene. Protesters yelled to the officers that Defendant Rittenhouse had just shot people. Remarkably, the officers did nothing to stop Defendant Rittenhouse, let alone question him or arrest him. Instead, officers spoke to Defendant Rittenhouse and then let him walk away. In fact, what they said was, like, what Rittenhouse said is that when he approached them and wanted to talk to them, they were like, "We are here to deal with a shooting. We've got reports of a shooting. Go away. Leave us alone. We have to go find the shooter." Or, and then they threatened to pepper spray him if he didn't go away. So, yeah. The only reason the law enforcement defendants allowed Defendant Rittenhouse to walk away after shooting three people was because he was white and because he was affiliated with the armed individuals who had the law enforcement defendants' explicit support. Or because they didn't realize that he'd actually shot somebody. Like, that's the key thing. They didn't know what was going on. There was some serious fog of war here. There was a whole bunch of other people leaving that they just, By inviting, deputizing, conspiring with, and ratifying the actions of armed individuals who were empowered to patrol the streets of Kenosha, the law enforcement defendants created an extremely and obviously dangerous and deadly environment, which led directly and foreseeably to the shootings of Joseph Rosenbaum and others. The law enforcement defendants' open support of and coordination with the armed individuals in the minutes and hours before the shootings deprived Joseph Rosenbaum and other protesters of the basic protections typically provided by police. It was a license for the armed individuals to wreak havoc and inflict injury. Defendant Rittenhouse's own lawyers have blamed the shootings on the law enforcement defendants. And you know what? I think they've got a better case against the police than they do against Rittenhouse. Like, this is highlighting their abject failure to ensure basic law and order to citizens. Like, yes, cool, great. It's the Rittenhouse stuff here that is ridiculous here. The law enforcement defendants continued their disparate treatment of black people even after the deaths of Rosenbaum and Huber. For example, defendant Miskinnis refused to publicly condemn the crimes of defendant Rittenhouse or the other armed individuals, and instead has ratified that misconduct. Indeed, he's defended the armed individuals as citizens exercising their constitutional rights. The protesters received the opposite treatment from defendant Miskinnis. Moreover, in his first press conference after the shooting, defendant Miskinnis refused to make any statements condemning or even dissuading the armed individuals, even when he was specifically asked if he wanted armed vigilante groups to be present again the next night of protests. So, now, it's really interesting that they're trying to bring racism in this, because everyone involved is white. Rosenbaum is white. Grosskreutz is white. Huber is white. Rittenhouse is white. Everyone is white. Everyone here. So, but they want to make this racism. If defendant Rittenhouse were black, the law enforcement defendants would have acted much differently. Sure. And, you know, if he were made of ice cream, he would have melted. Like, you know, what? You can't know what this hypothetical scenario actually is. So if a black person had approached police with an assault rifle offering to patrol the streets with the police, he most likely would have been shot dead. I'm betting that this is going to be rejected because somebody's going to find one of the guys out there was black. Like, yeah. If a black man had shot 3 citizens with an assault rifle and was seen walking away from the scene of the shooting with the assault rifle in hand, while other citizens yelled he was an active shooter, he would have been shot dead. First, relevance. Second, how do you know that? Yeah. In none of these circumstances would the law enforcement defendants have participated the individual to roam the streets illegally and heavily armed, shoot civilians, and then walk past a dozen officers, talk to them, and
look at paragraph 113.
I also like how they're basically saying, listen, we are entitled to racism. All of these things would have been racist on the police, and because they didn't do them, we need money.
I also like how white is capitalized. You don't usually see white capitalized, so I'm not sure what the editorial choice on that was, but okay.
That is true. They say, upon information and belief, one need not look any further than the very event that gave rise to the protest at which Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber were killed. Although Jacob Blake was not at the site of a shooting, possessed no gun, brandished no weapon, had not shot or hurt anyone.
He did.
And was climbing into his own car with 2 children. Blake was shot in the back 7 times by officers.
Vast mischaracterization of what he was. He was climbing into his own car with 2 children who he was not allowed to take away. He was trying to essentially kidnap them.
And didn't he have a weapon within reach?
He sure did. He had a knife.
And like he was going towards the knife?
Yep.
Yeah.
After being tased twice. And he just kept going.
By contrast, defendant Rittenhouse was walking away from the scene after killing 2 people and seriously injuring a 3rd person with an assault rifle in his arms, and he was permitted to simply walk away. Jacob Blake is black. Defendant Kyle Rittenhouse is white.
What the fuck? I'm sorry, we hadn't reached the 2-hour mark yet. That was probably too much too soon.
You know what? I'm going to allow it because, yeah. Moreover, the demonstrators were a diverse group of citizens protesting police violence against black people, which included many black Americans and other people of color, none of whom tried to murder Rittenhouse. With the exception, perhaps, of Jump Kick Man, who tried to jump kick Rittenhouse, and then when Rittenhouse was like, I got a gun, he's like, we good. And Rittenhouse didn't shoot him.
Yep.
Like, that guy, Jump Kick Man, we don't know his name, because Rittenhouse did not shoot him, even though he tried to kick Rittenhouse's head in, because
Didn't the
you know
prosecution indicate at the Rittenhouse trial that they had figured out who Jim Kipling was at some point?
they might have.
That he's known. I think it was a
Yeah,
mystery for
it's
a long time, but I think at some point they did identify who it was.
regardless. Rittenhouse didn't take that shot, and I'm gonna say a lot of people would have been inclined to take that shot. So I think they're trying to stretch this to say racism when there isn't racism. Um, the armed individuals were all white. Okay. Similarly, the protesters were advocating a viewpoint critical of the police, including defendants KPD and KCSD. The armed individuals espoused a viewpoint that was just avowedly pro-police. I don't know if Rittenhouse is all that pro-police at this point. The difference in treatment of the two.
I'm not sure he was especially pro-police at the time, necessarily.
I don't think he was either. I think he was just like, you get the sense when you see his testimony and so forth that it was just like a bunch of his friends were like, hey, come with us to do this thing. We're going to protect some, like, this car dealership. And he was like, okay. He kind of seemed more like he was along for the ride than anything else. And in fact, when you look at the other activities people saw him doing, like, you know, what people saw him doing through the night, it was like, they like, oh yeah, we saw him handing out water. We saw him trying to apply medical attention to somebody. Like, we saw him trying to help people. He used a fire extinguisher to put out a fire. He wasn't
that argued at one point basically as being an aggravating thing to do? Because the protesters had lit the dumpster on fire, and by him putting out the fire, he was acting in a way to antagonize and aggravate the protesters. So
Binger argued that he was like,
yeah.
Binger argued that he was making.
I forgot how stupid all the things Binger argued was. There was some real stupid in there.
Oh, Binger, just about everything he threw in was like insane levels of stupid, and but yeah, he argued that was essentially, you know, that he's spoiling for a fight because he put out this fire that they really wanted to have the fire. So putting out the fire is therefore.
I like how putting out a fire is now a prelude to a civil unrest or something. It's.
I mean, you know that when I want to start shit, I always do it by putting out a fire. That's. You know, that's always good for a fight, right? That, like, he literally put out the dumpster fire.
That was, as memory serves, threatening a gas station at the time.
Yes, they were trying to roll the dumpster, the flaming dumpster.
That's a problem. I don't know if they understood that, but, you know, dumpster fire plus gas station equal boom.
Yeah, equals gas station explosion.
Which, you know, would hurt a lot of people. It would probably wind up killing a lot of people.
There were a bunch of people nearby.
I've never exactly been near a gas station when one explodes, but I imagine it's not necessarily going to be great for my health.
I would not be. I would not be thrilled on that one. So yeah. And I'm seeing Rittenhouse did not put out the dumpster fire. He put out a fire. And Binger specifically argued that him putting out that fire was hostile to the rioters who started the fire. Rioters want more fire. Rittenhouse is there making less fire. Therefore, Rittenhouse is looking for violence with the rioters. And I'm like, all right. Basically, they were patrolling the streets with weapons of war. Again, the AR-15 is used by no military. No military uses the AR-15.
Yeah.
Participating in the police action and threatening and inflicting violence on innocent civilians. Because spelling is not a thing we do today.
Look, that's the least of their problems. At least their numbering has gotten a little bit, like, not quite as absurd.
It does numbers. While the diverse group of protesters criticizing police actions were ordered to disperse because they were violating the curfew order, no such orders were given to the pro-police individuals who were in violation of the curfew as well and known to be slashing tires. I mean, I don't think that they're going to be able to establish this against law enforcement, because law enforcement could say, listen, we didn't shoot Rosenbaum. And Rittenhouse is going to be able to say, yeah, I shot Rosenbaum because he needed shooting because he was trying to kill me at the time. And yeah. The reaction from some of the law enforcement defendants to the shooting of 3 individuals by one of the pro-police armed individuals was openly callous. One of them texted on the night of August 25th, shortly after Rosenbaum and the others had been shot by defendant Rittenhouse, listening to the gunfire, such a nice night. He then linked to a live stream of the shooting on Twitter and texted, nice video.
I hate this lawsuit. Why are we still reading this?
You don't have a right. We're going to read it. If you don't want to read it, you're in the wrong place.
Fair. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I shouldn't impose on you. Please continue reading.
But the what do you call it? The you don't have a right to have the police be kind to your, like, or for them to be sad about your guy dying, right? Like, it's just, you don't have that right. The protesters were also treated differently than the armed individuals in terms of who was subject to arrest. In the days after the protest began, more than 150 protesters were allegedly violating the curfew order. Not even a single one of the armed individuals was arrested by the law enforcement defendants for violating the same curfew order. That'll be interesting to see if they can support it. Not even a single one. I'm betting they can find one. Many of the armed individuals with whom the law enforcement defendants departments had allied themselves were avowed racists.
Really?
But they're not going to...
The Boogaloo Boys?
They're going to say, upon information...
The Boogaloo Boys makes an appearance in this lawsuit? Wow.
Yep. Among the armed individuals present at the protest was Ryan Balch, a member of the Boogaloo Boys who could be seen patrolling the streets with defendant Rittenhouse. The Boogaloo Boys are a right-wing militia group whose adherents include neo-Nazis and white supremacists. According to Balch, as many as 32 members of the Boogaloo Boys were in Kenosha patrolling the streets.
Wow.
How the F are police going to identify, that? In the months after he killed Joseph Rosenbaum, defendant Rittenhouse was seen in a bar in his hometown flashing an OK sign, a symbol of white supremacy / white power.
No, it wasn't.
Also a symbol of... It's a symbol of the OK sign. Like, literally, you call it an OK sign because that is... Yeah. Now, to be fair, this whole bar that he's in was apparently set up by his crappy lawyers.
Yeah. Those lawyers decided this was a good idea for some reason.
Yeah. They wanted to do this as a fundraising thing. So, yeah, he was like, yeah. It was a good thing that he got rid of those lawyers. So, systemic racial discrimination in the Kenosha Department and Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. Again, your client is a white dude. And you want to make this... You want to make this into a racism thing. So they say the KPD has just 8 black police officers out of a force of more than 200 officers. It has never had a black person in top leadership positions, including police chief, assistant chief, or police inspector. How does that help your white client? Christopher Carter, a former black police officer in the KPD who retired in 2011, has said he was consistently subject to racist aggression, including being called the N-word, and was discriminated against during his time at the KPD and witnessed racist policing practices towards citizens. I really agree with him that somebody who's going to throw around the N-word, especially with the hard R, is a bad person.
Yeah.
Which brings
I'd like to suggest paragraph 125.5 at this point. In 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its famous decision, Dred Scott versus Sanford. In this way, the city of Kenosha has been poisonously poisonously racist this entire time.
But, like, you know who did throw around the N-word with the hard R? Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum was throwing that around. This crusader for racial justice, Rosenbaum, was going around yelling that. So, yeah. In a recent article in the Washington Post, 6 current and former officers described a department at odds with people of color, both inside and outside its ranks, with some officers routinely using racist language and excessive force. Again, your client is a white dude. One of the former officers stated, "You have officers there who openly admit to pulling someone over because they're black and driving a nice car. Did this happen to your client?" And these are officers who train new officers.
I'd ask how it's relevant, but it's so clearly not. I can't even be bothered.
Yeah. It's in fact so clearly not that if I was the judge looking at this, I would order these portions of the statement of claims struck.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well, first of all, I just dismiss it right out the gate because I'd just be C like C. Grauskowitz versus, basically, just copy paste, paste all that rationale.
But just
save myself a lot of time.
Yeah, we're gonna strike a ton of this stuff. And just 11 days before Jacob Blake was shot, a woman was arrested for filming police officers engaging in threats and physical abuse during the arrest of a black man. How is this relevant to your client? Her video captured a KPD officer punching a man in the ribs twice after he'd already been handcuffed. He's a bad dude. Like, maybe that officer should get some jail, but how's this relevant to your lawsuit?
I mean, at this point, because of how messed up this lawsuit is, I'm willing to at least entertain the possibility that despite the fact that he's already in handcuffs, that this isn't excessive force. And normally, of course, I wouldn't necessarily draw that conclusion, but this lawsuit is so messed up. This
lawsuit is so bad that
I am not taking at face value at this point the concept that punching a man who's already handcuffed is necessarily excessive force, because you have lost my respect.
It's really hard to take any of the claims seriously when they say things like, "Oh, Grosskreutz was just trying to talk to him and just trying to convince him to surrender." It's like, no, he was pointing a gun at Rittenhouse's head by his own admission. Yeah, we're not.
We actually get to some legal claims. Yay!
Holy crap! I didn't know they were going to make any.
Wait a second. They're legal claims. What do you think this is? A lawsuit? I thought this was a PR document.
Conspiracy to deprive constitutional rights.
Sure, why not? Yeah, that's fine.
Defendants acted in concert with each other and other co-conspirators, including defendant Rittenhouse, Mathewson, members of the Kenosha Guard, and other non-party armed individuals, reached an agreement among themselves to deprive Rosenbaum of his constitutional rights. All is described.
Wait a second. Are you trying to claim at this point that they specifically came up with an agreement to deprive specifically Rosenbaum of his constitutional rights? Are you really trying to say they came up with a conspiracy with respect to Rosenbaum in particular at this point?
It looks like that is.
Because that's the way you wrote this.
And I'm like,
wow, that's okay. Apparently they had it out for specifically Rosenbaum. We have a conspiracy against him. F that guy, I guess. Damn.
In so doing, these co-conspirators conspired to accomplish an unlawful purpose by an unlawful means. In addition, these co-conspirators agreed among themselves to protect one another from liability for depriving Rosenbaum of these rights. Really?
At what point did they reach this agreement? And how did they do that?
And do you see the police actually protecting Rittenhouse from liability here? Did that happen? Or was he charged with multiple counts of murder? Because I remember him going to trial for multiple counts of murder.
I love how you've teed up here in paragraph 131 that the very act of defending themselves from this lawsuit is in and of itself furtherance of the conspiracy, because they're trying to protect themselves from liability, right? So the very act of defending the lawsuit is just furtherance of the conspiracy. Wow, that's a neat trick.
In furtherance of the conspiracy, each of the co-conspirators committed overt acts and was otherwise a willful participant in joint activity. I don't think Rittenhouse thought he was in joint activity with the police. He was just wandering around doing this, so yeah.
Also, strictly speaking, if it's joint activity, I'm not sure strictly speaking talking about conspirators is correct, because you'd be talking about like accessories and other things, like if you're actually engaged in a joint activity.
Yeah. And MDG, that is way over. Nobody's got beef with the UI guy. Get out of my chat if you're just trying to start drama.
Wow, really?
Years ago.
Damn.
Yeah, they're trying to bring up drama from like years ago. That
shit, dude. That's a long time ago. Get wasted, dude.
Yeah.
Christ.
If you're just here for drama, that's not what we do here. We talk law here. Goodbye.
Well, we talk whatever this is.
Oh, well, we talk attempts at law. This is not committing a law. This is committing an attempt to law. So, yeah. The misconduct described in this count was recklessly or objectively unreasonable and was undertaken intentionally with malice, willfulness, and reckless indifference to the rights of Rosenbaum and others. As a direct and proximate result of the illicit prior agreement referenced above, Rosenbaum's rights were violated and he suffered injuries, including emotional distress and death.
Not for nothing, but how are you going to prove emotional distress?
Emotional distress usually requires you to prove things via like counseling. Like you need like a psychiatrist report. Is the psychiatrist like, are they going to call as an expert witness? Like a medium? We had appointments between this medium and this psychiatrist, and they said Rosenbaum.
And he is still distressed even in the afterlife. In fact, he's in this courtroom right now. He's unable to move on.
He was very sad in the like half second between him trying to murder Rittenhouse and him being dead, because that's about how long that transaction took place of him, of that plan going badly in the worst possible way for him. So emotional distress and death. All right. Plaintiff's
I have emotional distress for reading this complaint.
Yeah. You may have a cause of action. This is like the legal equivalent of asbestos. Have you got, yeah. So plaintiff's injuries were caused by the actions and decisions of defendants Beth and Miskinus acting in their individual and official policy-making capacities, Larson acting in his official capacity, and by employees and contractors of the Kenosha Police Department, Kenosha County Sheriff's Department, additionally responding departments, etc., and defendant Rittenhouse. So count 2, conspiracy to obstruct justice based on invidious discrimination. Hey, here's a claim that they could agree with. Defendants are persons. I think we finally got to something that they could say, like, yeah, this is not complete bullshit. Defendants acting in concert with each other. Oh, we're back to bullshit. And other co-conspirators, including defendant Rittenhouse, Mathewson, members of the Kenosha Guard, and other non-party armed individuals, reached an agreement among themselves to deprive Rosenbaum of his constitutional rights and equal protection of the laws, all described in the various paragraphs of this complaint. Again, how? I don't know why they're going with conspiracy on this. Like, specifically, working in concert with these others, defendants targeted individuals of color and individuals allied with them in protest against racial discrimination, including Rosenbaum, by creating a dangerous environment in which injury to Rosenbaum and others was highly
likely. The defendants created the dangerous environment? The defendants created the dangerous environment. The defendants were the ones who created the dangerous environment. Really? Really?
Yeah.
So, are you sure?
They did this by permitting the all-white armed individuals, many of whom had openly espoused racist and violent intentions, to taunt, threaten, and monitor the diverse group of protesters by permitting
I'm taunting, threatening, and monitoring them as we speak, man. What do I care?
by permitting the all-white armed individuals to patrol the streets like deputized police officers. Like deputized. I thought you said they were deputized. Make up your mind within your clothes. By offering them assistance and praise while simultaneously ordering protesters to disperse, and by ultimately corralling the protesters and funneling them towards the all-white armed individuals to deal with them. Moreover, in the week or so after the protest began, more than 150 members of the racially diverse group of protesters were arrested for violating defendant's curfew order. Not a single one of the all-white armed individuals was arrested for violating the same curfew order. The misconduct described in this count was...
Are you assuming they're racist, sir? Have you done your full ethnic genealogy to know that they're all white?
I don't know how they could possibly know this. They're just making a guess. So,
did you make an assumption based on someone's outward appearance that they are a member of a particular race? How very bigoted of you, sir.
They also note again that he suffered injuries, including emotional distress and death. Oh, wow.
What's Rittenhouse's like ethnicity? Is he like Italian or something where he's not actually even white? That'd be hilarious.
I don't know. Equal protection, they're arguing. Defendant's conduct was motivated by racial animus and constituted purposeful discrimination. Rittenhouse totally shot Rosenbaum because he's a black guy. Oh, wait, he's not a black guy. He's clearly not. Maybe he shot Rosenbaum because he's a mental patient who was threatening to kill him and then was chasing him with the apparent intent to kill him. So, yeah. Oh, and we are at a particular time.
Salt flow it, baby. Spice.
Who is being sued and who is bringing suit? They're suing every police officer and city in the area, as well as Kyle Rittenhouse. And the person suing is the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum. So Rosenbaum is like his estate is suing. So yeah. All right.
Since we're past to our mark, can I just like swear like
not
like a sailor?
Like, not sailor like, but you know, we can say what the fuck is wrong with this. Yeah. So again, they're arguing the conspiracy. They're trying to make this into a racial thing when again, like your client is white. Or was. I'm guessing he's probably more like green at this point.
Well, you think he's getting money?
No, I think he's rotting and probably, probably some putrefaction going on.
Sorry.
The misconduct is... So, more First Amendment retaliation. I am pretty sure Rittenhouse didn't shoot Rosenbaum because he was speaking. He shot Rosenbaum because Rosenbaum was trying to kill him. Like,
will you say that?
Yeah. They subjected Rosenbaum and other peaceful protesters to discrimination and retaliation because of the viewpoints critical of police. Yeah, and also critical to gas stations.
Nice.
So this argument is that the protected speech was a motivating factor in the defendant's disparate, discriminatory, and retaliatory treatment of the protesters. Here's the thing. I think they could actually maybe make a claim for there was discriminatory conduct. But the problem is connecting that to the death. Seems like it needs to cross several bridges, and those bridges are washed out, and the river is now fire, and there are snipers posted on both banks, and like it's just not happening. There's a minefield in between you and where you need to be. So yeah. First Amendment rights were violated and he suffered injuries, including emotional distress and death. This has got to be one of the few First Amendment claims where it's like, my First Amendment rights were violated and I died. They were violated so hard I died. Deprivation of due process. That's interesting. How are they saying that he was deprived due process? So increase the danger. They say the more of the deputized claim. How is this a violation of due process? Oh, they can't actually figure that out themselves. I don't see anything here that says that there was a violation of due process. So they throw that in, but it makes no sense. Failure to intervene. They neglected to prevent or aid in preventing these wrongful acts. Don't the police lack any duty to intervene?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hasn't it been well established that the police can watch you die and it's fine?
Pretty much. Yep.
If you call 911, it's like, I'm dying. The cop on the phone can be like, that's hilarious. Click, and you have no claim. Municipal liability. This is just going to be how they say that the municipalities are at fault. And that's going to be because of failure to promulgate proper adequate rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. I don't care as much about the cities because I'm really here to talk about Rittenhouse. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. How are you going to make out emotional distress here?
Good question.
What are the damages for a half second of emotional distress?
Good question.
He felt real bad in the half second before he died. What's the damages? Okay, let's assume he made this out. I got your damages right here. We'll just there we go. $20. There you go.
Hot sauce will call it even.
No, the hot sauce I'm keeping. Screw that. He can't have the hot sauce. I'm not sending anything like that useful. $20 Canadian. That's nearly worthless at this point. So
but maybe if he has some of that wonderful Runkle hot sauce, he'll revive from the dead because it's just that good.
That is not a claim I make.
Okay.
It is good, but I don't know if it's that good. Negligent.
It's so good his estate will forget all about him.
Let's be honest with this. Looking at the life Rosenbaum lived, I suspect that his family and those around him were probably not super happy with him. So I suspect he's probably more of the black sheep sort. So yeah. Although maybe they'll make that as a basis for a racism claim. Defendant Rosenbaum was the black sheep of the family, and they hate black people.
Okay.
It would be as coherent as the rest of this crap. He suffered emotional distress of the type that a reasonable person would expect to occur. Prove it. Prove he suffered emotional distress. Because, I actually love that the emotional distress claim is here. I love that that's in here. Because you know what that makes very relevant? Rosenbaum's psychiatric history.
Yeah, I guess it does, yeah.
Because at Rittenhouse's trial, they couldn't bring in his psychiatric, they said, listen, while that might have made Rosenbaum violent, that doesn't go to Rittenhouse's understanding of his violence, because Rittenhouse wouldn't have known that.
Right. But it does go to the images, yeah. So, yeah.
If you're saying that it's relevant because of, if you're saying that there was emotional distress, then now it's relevant. So now they're going to hear like that Rosenbaum was depressed and suicidal before this. And do you think that that's going to play into a different narrative for this jury? Whoa!
Could do.
I just exploded a pop in my or a
I noticed.
cider
I
in my
heard.
lap.
I
That is
heard.
unpleasant.
Mm.
All right. Well, that was exciting. I did not shake that up, but that is all over the place. I'm going to let you handle things for a second while I clean up a giant puddle. I will be right
Sure
back.
will do. Count 10 negligence. Each paragraph of this complaint is incorporated as if restated fully herein. Defendants had a duty to Rosenbaum. He did? Seriously? A duty? How's that work? How the police have an affirmative duty? Or Kyle, how's that work? There's so much case law that says they don't. I don't get it. And other protesters to act with ordinary care and prudence so as to not cause harm or injury to Rosenbaum. By engaging in a manner described in this complaint, defendants failed to act with ordinary care and breach the duty of care owed to. Next page. Ian. Next page. Next page. Okay, well, you know, Ian is not here to help me with the page stuff, so I'll just talk to you a little bit. Hi everyone, I'm Callie, the bee fish. How are you guys doing? Hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Here on Friday Night Frenzy. We're having a good time. This lawsuit makes about as much sense as I do. I'm Callie the bee fish. Yeah. How you doing, chat? Having a good one? Yeah. So this lawsuit's a whole bunch of stupid. This lawsuit's just a whole bunch of stupid on every possible level. And it makes no sense. And it makes me sad. It makes the lawyer in me sad. And it's like, it makes me wonder, what have I done wrong in my life that I'm here to read this? Because it's such a waste of my time, energy, focus, and other things. Yeah. So it's going great. It is mind-blowingly, incredibly stupid. I have no ability to scroll because it's on his computer, so we're just stuck here. Is this better or worse than the ChatGPT suit? It's not good. It's bad. It's pretty bad. Do the courts ever admonish attorneys who file bad faith lawsuits like this? Yes, they do sometimes. And I'd certainly be thinking about it right about now. So, yeah. We could talk about other things going on in my life and channel, just by the way of a little bit of self-plug since we're waiting. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my channel for some reason. Hi, my name's Uncivil Law. I do legal analysis. I do a lot of Supreme Court stuff, Court of Appeals cases. I do true crime stuff. I do court development. I recently did one in a quasi-related case, Nicholas Sandman. You'll remember the Covington Catholic kid with the red hat that was on the Lincoln Memorial grounds as he was approached by Nathan Phillips, the Native American, with a beating drum. So I recently covered a case out of the Sixth Circuit where Nicholas Sandman lost his defamation lawsuit against New York Times et al. So and that was interesting. So you can check that out if you're into that, since this is sort of quasi-related. A lot of people thought that, you know, for example, a lot of people thought that Kyle Rittenhouse was going to be able to sue for defamation. I'm like, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. And I said a year ago, I'm like, I don't think so. And Nicholas Sandman, you know, just losing his defamation lawsuits, and he had a better claim. So I don't think any of them are getting paid. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what the counterclaim I'd make on this one, but
Wasting my time.
No. Maybe I should sue for like the getting cider everywhere. That was really unpleasant. That exploded just everywhere. All right. So negligence. They breached their duty of care, which caused him death. Okay. Negligent hiring, supervision, and training. Basically, they're saying that they didn't train the police officers. I'm going to skip that over because of I really care more about Rittenhouse on this one. So, survival. Each of the paragraphs above, in the manner described, he committed unlawful conduct, as a result of which defendant Kyle Rittenhouse fatally shot Joseph Rosenbaum.
Survival isn't a cause of action.
Apparently it is. Between having been shot and when he ultimately died, Rosenbaum suffered other damage to his person.
I've never heard of a cause of action called survival. Are we making stuff up now?
Well, and also this is like seconds. He did not last long. Like, yeah, I don't see it here. Wrongful death. So basically they're saying he died and he wasn't supposed to. Respondent superior.
I good times, yeah.
I.e. that these are your agents and therefore you're responsible.
Yeah.
Indemnification, so public entities to pay tort judgments for which employees are liable. This doesn't really apply to Rittenhouse at all either. What are they asking for in terms of damages? He wants compensatory and punitive damages in a fair and reasonable amount. He doesn't specify what that is. He wants all the money. So
I'll give you a fair and reasonable amount.
I would be inclined to file a countersuit on this one, but that's only because I am super salty, and so my countersuit would be kind of insulting. You know what I'd be going for a countersuit? Defendant Rittenhouse files suit in the amount of 23 cents, that being the average price for a round of .223 ammunition.
Nice.
We want that back. Your client, through his trying to kill us. Although I think he actually fired several shots. So, yeah, it would just be like, yep.
Sue him for the bullet that cost him what? Okay. All right.
So, I feel like that might be too salty. But, yeah.
He's in possession of my property. I want it back.
I want those
conversion.
I want specific performance. I want those specific bullets.
Pick up the body. Let's get my ammo back.
All right, let's do a swoop. Talk about some super chats, and then talk about something maybe a little lighter-hearted. Swoop. I figured that was a good swoop. All right. I see Whiskey 77. Cheers to my favorite Canadian. Cheers. With what's left of my cider. Popping in to say Ian's Peterson video was great. Kurt has been putting out great Trump content too. Thanks for being unbiased and protecting process. I haven't been following the Trump aspect quite as much. Mostly because whatever I say about Trump, people will just be like, hey, shut up, Canadian. So I don't think there's a winning way for me to discuss that one. I'll leave it to other people, but that one will be a shit show. However it works out, it's going to be a shit show because nobody is going to accept that the system worked at the end of the day. I just feel that that's the case. In Lloydminster, going to the Tim's for a coffee crosses the border. Yep. Alicia G says, you're never a substitute, Runkle. Happy Friday. Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Chandler Remington. Hey, Chandler says, doesn't the use of war vehicles just show that Kyle was in a hostile environment that protesters were creating? It would be an argument I'd make. Things were so dangerous that police couldn't, needed these vehicles to be safe from the protesters. Why can't the military use hollow points? What do hollow points do? Hollow points expand when they hit something. And so by expanding, they leave a larger wound track. That also makes them less likely to overpenetrate, and so they're required for use where I am in hunting. You can't hunt without using hollow point ammunition because they want it to be humane for the animal. And it's the military. They banned them because initially these things were like they banned dum-dum bullets, which was people cutting X's into the front of their bullets and so forth. This was a very new technology when it got banned.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of like, we don't understand what this does. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think the military would really use hollow points if they could, because military doctrine is much more about seriously injuring people so they can't fight rather than it is to actually kill them, for a bunch of reasons that we will get to another time. All right. So, Dark Loose G, how does shooting someone engaged in arson, particularly of a residence, pan out under defense of others? Kurt. So that one was aimed at you. I don't know if they want me to weigh in as well.
Well, in defense of others, as the name suggests, you're trying to defend someone else against an imminent threat of death or grievous bodily harm to their life. And the nature of the self-defense is to stop the harm from occurring to that person. So the only scenario I could imagine where you could, well, I don't know if it's the only scenario, but a scenario where I could imagine a valid self-defense claim against an arsonist would be, I guess, if you had a person who was about to commit arson against a building in which someone lived and you were shooting the person. And also, incidentally, it's not you doing the shooting because it'd be defense of yourself. So if someone's about to burn someone else's home down and you shoot them to stop that from happening, maybe, I guess it's possible. But you'd have to have a very specific factual scenario for this to occur, I'd imagine.
I'm just thinking, like, let's say you see at the local school. You go to the school and you see that somebody has chained all the doors shut and is going out there with some cans of gasoline. And they got the cans of gas out. They're ready to set fire. And you happen to be there with a rifle. You take the shot. You take that person out. I think you'd have a very good claim at that point.
Yeah. So this would be a pretty unlikely scenario.
Yeah.
And also defense of others.
It doesn't come up that often, but like if it did, that specific scenario I could see as a defense of others claim. So yeah, defense of others is usually more something like I saw this guy was beating his wife and she was gonna die, so I came in and hit him with a brick, and that stopped the fight. I should be okay for the hitting him with a brick.
Defense of others is also tricky because I'm not sure on the exact split in the US, but in some states you have to be right in fact, not just merely right in perception. So if, for example, we were acting because we had an agreement in advance, like we're staging this because we're theater students, I don't know, whatever. So we're staging whatever it is, and you come along and you observe it, and to you it doesn't look staged because we're good actors. So you act. Now you're wrong in fact, and so now you may not have defense of others. So the defense of others is tricky because you have to, in at least some jurisdictions, you have to be right in fact that there was in fact a genuine threat.
Yeah, whereas for self-defense, I think in every jurisdiction,
in self-defense, you would obviously know because you're inside the situation. The whole problem with self-defense, the whole problem with defense of others, is you're coming from outside the situation, so you don't know what led to it, and so you're acting at least partially in the dark.
You can get situations for self-defense where it's where you can be acting reasonably, but still be wrong and still be valid in self-defense.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is not a universal thing. In some states, you have to be right in fact. In some states, reasonableness is not going to cut it. In some states, you have to be right in fact. So it depends where you are and which jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's
so be careful.
Be careful. Know your laws. And the guy to check out on this is Bronca. if you're in the U.S. Like, because at that point he covers all of that, but like in the area where Rittenhouse was, it's just your belief, right? And so you can end up with a situation like, let's say you're walking
That's the
outside.
defense of others, is it? I don't even know for sure that that's true.
Oh, it's for defensive. I was talking about defensive, like self-defense.
Yeah, for self, yeah, then that's fine. Yeah,
because you could see somebody like you see somebody charging at you and they've got a knife out, and you're like, oh shit, and you draw a gun and you shoot that guy. Now
right.
that that could be
so
you're sitting there.
That also reminds me. It reminds me of the YouTuber who got shot and killed because I'm going to stage an armed robbery with a knife. Yeah. This was his genius idea. I'm going to stage an armed robbery. Now, no one else would know it was staged.
Yeah,
and so this guy, this YouTuber goes into a kids play business. The business is for kids to go play.
Oh,
it's
God.
Got ball pits or whatever that they go, right? There's some guy just sitting there, as one does in this business for the kids, and these YouTubers come in with the knives. They're real knives, and they simulate an armed robbery, and someone simulates shooting them to death.
I'm guessing that the one was a lot more convincing than the other.
Yeah, one was a lot more convincing than the other. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pro tip: do not simulate an armed robbery, because
it also doesn't work. It also doesn't legally work as a simulation because the business owner and no one else was in on it. It would only work as a simulation if the other side was in on it. Then it would be a simulation, but no one else knew. So now it's just an armed robbery again.
I mean, the other thing is, how does the court establish later that your intent was actually to just simulate an armed robbery and not to walk out with the money?
Good question. How far does the simulation go?
Yeah.
Very convincing simulation.
It's like, I'm simulating that I'm spending the money on
I'm going to simulate you going to jail for the next 30 years. So
yeah. It's like, just for realism in this simulation, we're going to throw you in jail for a long, long time. Just because we want your simulation to be real. I feel like that's fair. That seems
so be careful with defense of others, especially if you're walking into a situation that you don't understand.
Yeah,
so
like
if you're there from time zero, as it were, and the whole thing occurs before your eyes, that's one scenario versus you walk into the situation as it's already ongoing and you don't know what the situation is beforehand. I'd be real careful.
Yeah, like let's say you see a man and a woman arguing and then the man starts striking the woman. It's like the question is this something where like it's a domestic violence situation, or is it a situation where the woman just pulled a small gun and said, give me your wallet? If you didn't see what happened, you could be in a lot of shit. So be cautious. Contact a lawyer before you do anything if you're thinking of that, which basically means don't do it. All right. So let's see. There were other ones here. The way Runkle says against makes me chuckle. Fair. I don't know what my accent is like on that, but yep. Knowing law schools are all woke scares the hell out of me. Please help me feel hope here. They're not all woke. There's arguments back and forth. There's disputes.
At least when I went to law school, it wasn't too bad in sort of the wokeness. So I'm not sure how true that is or not, but things might have changed in the last
Kyle told
15 years.
Kyle told Nick he still has a dent in his skull. I can believe it.
I believe it.
Those don't buff out. Koru says you don't know what Rittenhouse's intention was. He brought a gun.
Wow.
And he didn't shoot anybody who wasn't trying to kill him. So his intention looks to me like self-defense. Grosskreutz brought a gun. And Grosskreutz was not allowed to have a gun because of his criminal history. Rosenbaum didn't bring a gun, but was actively provoking confrontations with everybody. What are people's intentions?
That would imply that everyone who's lawfully carrying it has intention to commit crimes. Like people lawfully carry all the time. doesn't imply that they have an evil intention.
And what happened to Rittenhouse's cousin who purchased the gun for him and gave it to him after Rittenhouse arrived in Kenosha? Didn't he end up taking a plea?
I think that's right.
I thought so. Ryanman YYC says, so do all named defendants need to file individual motions to dismiss? That's a lot of trees.
We can join
together. Some of them might end up being represented as groups. Like the police force and the police officers will probably be represented together. Maybe the city as well. That's fairly common. Rittenhouse is going to be on his own. They're not going to loop him in. He's going to have his own, his own counsel there. That MF Wolf says, did you get the link I sent you on X about the people stuck in the elevator in Canada and their building refusing to call for fire department? I saw you sent me a message about it. I didn't get a link. So I'm going to have to check through and see if there's a link there. Because, did ChatGPT write this lawsuit? Lol. I think ChatGPT would have done a better job. Wesley Hoke says, spice must flow, Ian. You're not wrong. Be sure to hit the like, peeps. Thank you, Iowa. Much appreciated. Andy's mom, Sammy, thank you for the membership. Much appreciated. MJG Baby Dragonlet, thank you for the membership. Have we seen Callie the Beefish today? I think we have.
Yeah, we have.
Audra, thank you for the new membership there. And if you want to see more of the Beefish, check out Uncivil's channel. There's lots of Beefish there. Kurt, Callie doesn't know football. You need to teach her since Clemson football starts on the 4th.
Will do.
And Torin3 says, dedicated dual camera streaming rig achieved. Streaming as much as I can stand this weekend. Current braid 18 inches so far, 900 hours to monetization. Guys, check out Torin's channel. He does tacketized, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, braiding. It is really cool, so check it out. It's a great sort of relaxing construction way to see. So, all right. Elf Liggins says, thanks for reminding me to go home before 9 on Friday. You're welcome. Andrew J says, just became a member on Uncivil Law. You two rock. Excellent. Candy Marie, thank you for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Celine says, for the replacement of not exploding cider fund and ongoing chair fund. And Melissa Ritchie says, when did you two first meet? Court case. I think it was doing Rittenhouse coverage.
Probably.
Yeah. So a little bit of a connection and tie in there. Both of us appearing on the stream there. There's also some gifted memberships here I should cover. So Equality, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Susan Davidson, thank you for 1 gifted membership, and then a second one. Eric Newman, thank you for 20 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Iowa, thank you Iowa with the Backyard Critter Cam. Thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Rhineman YYC, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Wesley Hope, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. And Koru, thank you for 1 gifted membership. And Koru, I see that there's some dispute in the chat. I just want to let you know, I really appreciate that you were, that you disagree, but do so in a respectful fashion and a fashion where nobody's throwing insults at each other. I really appreciate that. I love having you here. So thank you. And Jim Satala says, happy Friday, Kurt. You should smile more flies / honey. Yeah, that can be
not bad. It's not wholly invalid advice. I'll try to smile a little bit more. I'm in a good mood today.
Sometimes it can be a matter of fake it till you make it, but
that's fair.
All right, let's talk about something a little more friendly after we do a quick swoop here. All right, so there's our swoop. Let's bring up our latest story here. So Halle Berry's divorce is resolved, and she's going to be paying $8,000 a month in child support.
Okay.
I could do with $8,000 a month.
Yeah, me too.
It's not just $8,000 a month. She's also got to pay 4.3% of any income she receives above $2 million.
It's a very specific set of numbers. 4.3% above 2 million.
I suspect there was a lot of wrangling on that.
Yeah.
So,
and we're going to do some Hollywood accounting where all future projects she only gets 1.99 million, and we figure out other ways to get compensation that don't count as income.
I mean, I'd be hiring a team of accountants just for that, but she's also required to pay school tuition, and they're doing counseling and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine to me. It's like, Halle Berry, obviously, well, I would presume, is the one that has the greater financial wherewithal in the relationship. So just do the standard analysis,
I kind of feel like Halle Berry is almost certainly making the more money in that.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
mean, unless
she pays child support. So I'm not sure whether $8,000 or not is the right number, but yeah, otherwise fine.
And I see people saying this is why you need a prenup. Prenup won't help you against child support.
No, not really. They can't, because it's about the interest of the child.
You can't, like, I don't know of a jurisdiction where you can contract out child support.
Nope.
So
that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I mean, that's only what, $96,000 a year.
And is it somebody is asking for if they can ask for subs for, if they go live. Sure. I don't know what your channel is, but just like, don't spam it up. But if you want to ask once or twice, that's fine. I know how the early YouTuber game is, so yep. So, all right. We could talk about another silly one. That was a short one. We're not going to go too much longer just because it's late and because my throat still hurts because, still sick. But let's talk about let's talk about a sovereign citizen. We love those, right?
No.
You don't like sovereign citizens?
No, they all drive me absolutely insane. It's like, if I ever become a judge, I'm going to have like a sign on my entrance on the door into the courtroom. It's like, I'll figure out the right wording for it, but basically, if you argue sovereign citizen, you will be found in contempt. I'm just not tolerating this shit.
So I just want to show you guys a Canly search, and Canly is a free legal database for searching Canadian court cases. Plugging in Althea Reyes as the person, that's who we're talking about. It just keeps going. Load more. All right. So
I'll bite. Who or what is Althea Reyes?
So Althea Reyes is a vexatious litigant who has brought a number of proceedings under a bunch of different names. She doesn't like stick to one name.
Apparently she's a law school graduate.
Yeah, that is really interesting because she is apparently a law school graduate, and that doesn't help when she's a vexatious litigant, but yeah, she because she was declared a vexatious litigant, and so her name is registered with the court system. And so if she tries to file something, they will not file it under her name. So what she does is she just makes up new names and then files under that. So she's filed under Adwella. She's filed under Tawari. She's filed under a bunch of different things. Yeah. She's got all of these aliases that she uses to dodge this. So what is she accused of now? What has she been up to? So this is just now news. Vexatious litigant accused of leaving dead ferret in man's freezer.
Okay.
So the landlord says that a vexatious litigant tenant left a dead ferret in the freezer. Um, so he thought he was offering short-term accommodation to her brother, who may not actually exist.
Okay.
So yeah, here's a picture of her walking out of court.
Can you make it any bigger?
Yeah, I can try.
Put a new tab or something? She looks like a well-adjusted woman, so I guess she's I mean she doesn't look like
Yeah, she
okay,
doesn't look like a crazy person, but a lot of them don't.
I
Um,
guess.
so he met a woman named Rose Mohanad, and that turns out to be this person who's got all of these different names and aliases and so forth.
Hmm.
So yeah, he this she's at it again. Maybe at some point I should do something just reviewing all of her cases and all of her stuff. But she claims that it's being used for taxidermy, but it's been sitting there for 6 months. So yeah, I guess I'm going to follow this case and just see what's going on. But yeah, she is. She's probably going to end up in custody over time or over this.
Hmm. Well,
All
I
right.
wish her well.
And I'm being told I must swoop. So let us do a swoop here. I see somebody says ferrets are amazingly fun pets. I bet that one is not a fun pet at this point. All right, let's do a swoop and then cover one last topic, maybe two. I had to have that at a particular time. Like, I couldn't make that one longer than like 10 seconds because otherwise people would be leaving mid swoop. But that video is uh, like they play tug of war with that stick. It's pretty cute. Um, so I guess one of the things we can cover is that Kleenex will not be available in Canada soon. Brand name Kleenex is leaving Canada. Um, so um, a whole, I mean, there's still going to be like things to wipe your nose with there, but Kleenex is leaving, and so lots of people are freaking out. There is some panic buying going on. I don't know what brand is actually going to take over in Canada, but it'll be really interesting. It's also, I think, going to be harmful. Um, like, didn't Kleenex already become a generic brand?
Not in the United States, no, but they've been fighting for dear life.
So I think if they haven't lost that case in Canada, they're going to lose it.
Hmm.
Because if Kleenex is not operating in Canada, I bet people are going to be looking at. People are still going to be calling tissues Kleenexes. Like, they're not going to call them whatever else. And then if Kleenex wants to come back into Canada, it's like, no, people have been calling them Kleenexes for the last 5 years. When you weren't in business here, it's a generic term. I actually thought that the trademark issue is kind of interesting on that. Um, they've been, so now that said, Kleenex is remaining in Canada with regards to commercial products. So they're still selling like tissues to commercial things, but that's about it. So people are saying, why are they leaving? They say they're leaving because of economics. They're saying it's no longer economical to sell in Canada
Canadians don't need
because
Kleenex.
mostly they're saying that it's really expensive to ship like tissue paper because basically you ship a truck of Kleenex boxes and it's mostly air. So they're saying that they're losing things out before to local manufacturers. So I don't know. It's they're saying basically we're not making enough money on this, so we're not doing it. I've seen people blaming Trudeau. It's funny, but it's probably not accurate.
That's probably accurate.
And I guess we'll talk about one last one. And the last one is kind of dark. So I'll give people a trigger warning on this one if it discusses self-deletion. And so if that is something you don't want to hear about, then good night is sort of that one. But I want to talk a little bit about the case of Kenneth Law. Have you heard of this guy?
I'm not sure. The name doesn't strike me familiar.
So Kenneth Law was making a bunch of websites to sell a particular item. And this item is legal, and I won't name the chemical, but he was selling this chemical for the purposes of self-deletion. And so a bunch of people bought this chemical.
Is this as simple as Fixiant?
No, we're not going to get into details.
Okay.
But he was selling this to various places or people under basically for helping people self-delete. They say that he sent 1,200 packages to more than 40 different countries. And in Canada, he's now been arrested and charged with several counts of assisting or counseling in self-deletion. 2 counts, it looks like. Now, as a result of that, the other countries are taking an interest. The UK has just said, we think that we can connect this guy to 88 different deaths. And so the UK wants to extradite him. So this guy might end up being real popular in a lot of different countries because there's a bunch of countries that are now saying, we would like him. We would, could you send him to us, please? And so it's going to be interesting to see.
The chemical he's selling is legal.
The chemical he's selling is legal, but it's not legal to assist or counsel somebody with self-deletion.
Was he doing anything other than selling the chemical that would qualify as assisting or counseling?
He was putting them up on websites that say this is a great product for self-deletion.
Okay.
So, I mean, the chemical he's selling is legal and has legitimate uses. So there are plenty of people who buy it for legitimate purposes. And people saying we need to know. I'm not saying what the chemical is because YouTube will be upset. That is, but
well,
yeah,
I honestly don't know what you're talking about. So it's either going past me or my memory's not clicking or whatever. So we'll just all live in the dark together.
It's just a toxic chemical.
Okay.
So, but he was marketing this and basically saying this is great for self-deletion. And so people bought it for that purpose. Yeah, in Britain, they say 270 people bought it. And 88 of those people, they say died. So
I seem to remember reading recently that the self-deletion rate through authorized means is now higher in Canada than like all firearms related deaths per capita in the US.
It's getting up there. MAID is sort of taking off. And so there's disputes over that because I think people should have a right to decide what they do with themselves. But this guy is going to be in trouble, especially because like marketing it to foreign audiences is really playing the F around game. Because like, let's say he's acquitted, right? Let's say he is, let's say he beats the charges in Canada. And let's say he beats extradition because Canada would be happy to extradite him. I think that he meets the criteria. I'm going to have to go through the criteria just to be sure, but they basically note things like, would this be considered a crime if it happened in Canada? Is one element. And also, is the punishment that would be imposed something that Canada would consider to be, a civilized punishment? So, like, Canada's typically will not extradite to places with the death penalty unless they get an assurance that the death penalty is not going to be sought. So that's happened in the U.S. where, like, people who, they discover that somebody was a serial killer in the States, but they're living in Canada now. And the U.S. is like, we want him. It's like, so Canada will just be like, you can have him once you agree you won't seek the death penalty. That gets into fights. But even if you were to beat the extradition, he's not going to be able to travel anywhere. Because if he ever leaves the country, whatever country he goes to is probably going to arrest him and either prosecute them himself or arrest them, and send them to wherever he's going. So I think this is going to be an interesting case for the extradition issues and the extrajudicial issues, because if Canada arrests and, charges him and ultimately sentences him, will we extradite him after that? Can this guy end up in a sequence of being sent to various places and so forth?
Possibly. So, if we violate the laws of multiple sovereigns, then yeah, probably, possibly.
Yep, he could end up doing a lot of time. So anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here, unless there's a story we're missing out that you want to cover.
Not in particular.
All right, I am running out of I'm going to start coughing my lungs out probably shortly after we get off this stream. But yeah, we just it's good to hang out. It's good to talk about things, and I suspect Rackets is probably going to be talking about the Rittenhouse suit as well later tonight. Assuming he's got a copy, but he's usually on top of that stuff. So he'll have a different take. You can check that out there. Let's sort of do there's a few more super chats here. Sarah Turner, thank you for the YouTube membership and for the super chat saying, loving your podcast as always. Thank you so much. Rua she says, thanks for taking up the slack. Thank you so much. And Jim Satala says, I'm confused because the Canadian government, or doesn't the Canadian government assist people in doing that every day, like 8K since they legalized it? Yes, but they put an exception in for themselves, and they do not like competition.
Even if it's trying to kill their own citizens.
Well, I mean,
only we can kill our own citizens, damn it.
One of the questions people ask all the time is like, why is it illegal for me to run a lottery? The government runs lotteries all the time. It's like, well, because they don't want competition. Simple as that. So, all right, guys, check out Uncivil Law. He does. I think you're pretty much the only person who does like detailed U.S. Supreme Court coverage, which is.
I think I did every Supreme Court case last term. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I tried to do some, and I actually did some older ones too. I recently did a case with like basically the one that gave juveniles rights in the United States.
Oh, cool.
Was Galt, In re Galt. I think we discussed this before. It was 1966 or something like that. Arizona. I think he's 15 at the time. He makes a prank phone call to a woman.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah, and they basically convict him with basically no lawyer, no witnesses against him, basically no process, and they sentence him to 6 years in juvie because at the time the age of majority is 21. So 6 years in juvie despite being 15. So yeah, anyways, carrying on.
Jeez.
And so they're like the U.S. Supreme Court. So I did a historical review of that case. And yeah, other things like that. And I think we're gonna go back and try to hit some major cases every year since they started doing audio recording, which I think was late 1955 when they started doing audio recording of the Supreme Court. Maybe we'll try to do, try to hit like the top 5 from every year, since there's been audio recording, and try to do some historical stuff. It'll be fun.
I'm thinking I want to do some of the Supreme Court stuff. I just need to. The Canadian Supreme Court says that they ban restreaming of it. But I think I'd be fine with copyright and fair dealing and so forth. And Canada has crown copyright. Like the government can own the copyright to government materials.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I may actually need to seek legal advice before I can do it. Or
I'll do it.
Maybe I should just do it.
Let them come after me.
Well, here's the other question. Maybe I should just do it and then have a case of Supreme Court of Canada suing Runkle.
Could be fun. Were you suing the Supreme Court of Canada? Yeah, that could be fun.
Well, it would be them suing me.
We were covering this case, which kind of is on those lines. Oldest one. I think she's the oldest active judge in the United States, Judge Newman of the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. She's been there since they invented the thing. She was the first judge ever appointed to the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in 1982, and she's actually suing her own circuit because she's saying that they're trying to like push her out because she's like 96, and they're saying that they're trying to basically force her to retire without retiring. So she's suing her entire own circuit. Judge Newman versus the entire Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. Hilarious. I love it. Go, Judge Newman. You kick ass.
Yeah, that's entertaining because like that one is complicated. Because
yeah, and I think it was filed in the district court in DC, which I guess yes, and then that would I guess heard by the Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit. I don't even know how that works theoretically. This is a weird case.
Yeah, they'd have to. That would be a complicated one. And I see. Thank you, Susan Davidson, saying this has been a fantastic free chat tonight. Thank you very much.
And what's hilarious about it, right? Or what's one of the funny things about it is, once you hit, I think it's 65, you can retire without resigning, and you get what's called senior status. And basically, a senior status, you can kind of work as much or as little as you want, and you get paid exactly the same. And they'll just keep paying you full salary, and you can be like, I don't really want to work. And you don't have to, and they'll just keep paying you forever. And she's like, I don't want senior status. You can't make me. I want a full docket. And one of her quotes, she's like, I'm going to spend the next 5 years of my life until I die correcting all of my colleagues' mistakes. I'm like, yeah.
Whoa. So they might be going after her because she might be a bit of a firebrand.
She has 3 times the dissent rate of any other judge on the circuit. She doesn't like the agreeing. She likes the disagreeing. So,
hey,
yeah.
I can get behind that. That's kind of entertaining, though.
Yeah, it is hilarious. It's a very interesting case. So we cover that case and some other stuff. So yeah,
I would have been inclined, in her shoes, to just be like, "Oh, they're going to pay me forever to not do anything." That sounds like Christmas to me.
She's like, I want the full docket. You can't make me. You can't make me not hear cases. I want all the cases. Fuck you.
She's like, I want more cases. Like that. That's kind of awesome.
So covering that stuff up. We also do some true crime stuff. We do Florida Man. We try to do a little wide swath of everything. Covered the Nick Salmon lawsuit, for example, recently. Just kind of anything that looks legally interesting. And there's a lot of great stuff on the channel, so make sure to check that out on Uncivil Law.
Excellent. I got a few questions about what I'm doing. Am I going to be doing more sidebars? Yes. I had a sidebar video that I was tempted to put up, and then Emily was going to be covering exactly the same sidebars that same day. So I kind of thought that running a video of me covering the stuff that she covered that same day might not go over. So that one is just going to sit and wait for a bit. We'll get that out later. But there's some other ones I want to cover, and there's going to be overlap in the coverage. It's just not right away. I see people saying set up a redirect. I don't know where to redirect. And I don't know if I've got redirect privileges to where people want to redirect. So yeah, I can't redirect to it right now because I actually would have to upload it. So it's not going to be ready to go for a bit. Am I planning any game vids for Rule of Law? Yes. There's a couple of things I want to do. I want to do a one of I want to do one that is where the people are affecting are basically process servers. I want to do one where a superhero game in Mutants and Masterminds. That would be what do you call it? Rise of the Death Goat is what I'm planning for that one. And I have ordered my copy of Cities Without Numbers on its way. And so Cities Without Number is intended to be like Cyberpunk, based on the Worlds Without Number kind of game model. So it's just coming out. So I want to, I kind of want to do a stream on that one. So yeah. Role of Law plays Dark Heresy. I will tell you, I'm not a super fan of the Warhammer verse. I just find it too dark for me to get into. But did he just say Rise of the Death Goat? I did say Rise of the Death Goat. It is literally a death goat. It is a psychic goat. We'll have to get that set up and try to run that at some point in the near future here. All right, I'm gonna roll the outro here, and we'll go from there. So, good night, everybody.